Everybody ready? We'll get started at 5:35. Good evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome to March.
Yes. Crazy.
Crazy March, yes. Any recognition we need to do?
Nope.
No?
No,
Okay.
we're good.
Reports from other committees?
No updates. We did have a communications subcommittee meeting this past week, and we are still making good progress on website. The team gave Steve more guidance and direction on certain things that we're looking for, and our hope is that we have something, up and running before the end of the school year. So
Great.
that would be good.
Approval of February's meeting minutes. Sorry, I thought Mark was here. He is here.
He had to step up for a call.
He steps out, okay.
All right.
That's okay.
This is when we have the kids here. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great presentation.
Yep.
Whenever you are done reading, if someone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Is Christy on the phone?
No,
Okay.
not tonight.
It was a long meeting.
How did we adjourn? Was it late? Oh, yeah, it was 8:04. Oh, that was late. Should we go for the record tonight, Freddie?
No.
I think we
The
can amend for
shortest
this.
record, yeah.
We can amend for that.
We have the shortest record already.
Nah, there's always room for improvement.
That
That's
was
it.
the one Scott
wasn't
at.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the one.
Exactly.
Remember
Yeah, he
Scott?
tabled everything. Let's table that until the superintendent's back the next time. Let's table that until
That's
Scott,
just
I had him in and out of there in 30 minutes. Yeah, he tabled every agenda item.
Man, help me out here, man. No, you don't feed the beast. That's
That was a 1-hour meeting.
Yeah, he's texting me, we're out. Uh-huh.
I took a sip of your shake. Is that okay?
So, yeah, you can have it, Steve. It's all about you. Let me get you a cup. I'll share it with you.
We're just reviewing the meeting minutes.
Oh, good. I looked at those earlier.
Okay.
You did? I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Fred.
I'll
Right after I
second.
finished reading the laws, the state laws and the.
Excellent.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Kristen, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, report of the superintendent?
Excellent. So a couple of updates for the committee since we last met in February. First of which is around our bus monitor. That continues to be a challenge. We have a couple of updates for the committee. We had posted it, as we had talked about in the past. We had no takers when we did the original posting. We then reached out to Council on Aging, and I'll ask Diane or James to jump in, because I know we had an email over to Council today. Originally, didn't seem to be somebody who may have been interested, and then I think some new news came out that there might be somebody, so I'll have Diane and James jump in on that with an update in a second. The other conversation we had at our last meeting was around the bus driver, and seeing if we could do a switch, a bus driver. And so we put in an informal request to NRT, like that would be the typical way we would start. We would say, hey, we're requesting that we have a different driver on a certain route. And there were no volunteers, according to NRT, to make that. So then we sort of invoked the contract, and in the contract there's language that reads, as the customer of NRT, we have a right to do a formal letter and request a change. Steve Greenberg sent a formal letter to NRT, Steve, last week, I think.
I believe it was last week,
Yeah.
right?
And my understanding, did we confirm that, the new driver? Confirm
The
new
driver is,
today?
yeah, I got the text back from Cindy
Great,
when we talked about it, that they're using the sub trainer, to do the route.
okay,
So that's what's happening right now.
okay.
Sub-trainer?
Yeah, it's a trainer, but it's a sub driver as well. So a safety trainer, if you will.
Great.
Okay. So that will give us some data.
I believe it's one of the people who works like in Central Command. Yeah,
Yeah, so she's like, I think she's like the safety,
I talked to her on the phone when I called him. And, yeah,
Okay, that's interesting.
one of their big people.
Sure,
That's good.
Good.
And then,
Thank you.
can you guys remind me, Susan Gannon? We talked to her, what was the email back?
So I emailed her yesterday in regards to the pay scale, the range.
Right.
Because she had asked for that. And she responded, I believe last evening, that she may have 3 people interested and that they would be in contact.
Okay.
I have not heard anything.
This
so
is
far.
Council on Aging?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're on School Spring now.
We are on School Spring now, yes. We've now gone out to the much broader community to see if we can find a bus monitor.
We have 0 applicants, but
It's,
it'll pick some up.
Exactly. I like the positivity.
and just in terms of like length of time for the,
Sub-trainer.
what's the duration?
right now, it's permanent.
Yeah.
So
until
we just keep an eye on it.
Okay.
And at least for the rest of the year, because when we put in the formal request, it wasn't a formal request with the time constraint, it was,
Okay.
this is the request.
How long has it been?
2 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the week just started this week.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great
No, we'll continue to
movement.
keep an eye on it. And, James and Diane are keeping an eye on any sort of reports that are coming in, so we'll continue to monitor.
Thank you.
The DESE convening, this is just more of an update than anything else. The new Commissioner of Education is pulling together folks from a number of different constituencies and agencies on March 19th, 8 to 5 out at UMass Amherst, with the overarching goal being how can we develop an early blueprint of how the Massachusetts schools and education system can realign politically, regulatorily, and financially to support the next sort of 25 years in public education. We've been in very much a compliance-based model of education for a long time, and it sounds like there's a will at the Department of Ed to think about how we can rethink things, sort of the conversations we've been having in our 3 committees. And so that process will be happening in March, and I look forward to attending that and reporting back to the committee what I learned. So
Great.
I take that as good news. And then school committee stipend, this was a question that had come up, and I just wanted to remind the committee that in our budget, each member is entitled to, as a member of the committee, a $600 school committee stipend. There is no vote or anything like that. Nothing needs to happen. It's just more just making the committee aware that that is there. And that can certainly be communicated to Steve Greenberg, and that can be processed for any committee member who wants to process this to stipend for that role.
Okay.
So,
So then it's each individual committee member's responsibility to just reach out to you?
Yeah,
And
then
then
we-
they can choose to,
If they choose to take it, we just gotta run it through payroll,
okay.
and then we'll take care of it from there, so just let me know.
What happens if you don't take it? Like, does it just get absorbed?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go back through like a tailings process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I get it retroactive for the past?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that would've been sweet. Sweet little setup there.
He's not kidding.
No, I know. You can't, unfortunately.
Mark, I'm with you.
Different fiscal years, yes. We can't do that. That's it?
With interest.
Sure.
Report of the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Mr.
Good
Greenberg.
evening. There is no financial report for this evening. I will get one out to you shortly. I need to spend time on projections and really hammering into the salaries. So I think I'm not sure if I sent an email on that, but there's no financial report. If you have any questions between now and when I issue it, please just give me a call. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Included in the drive is the food service report. Let's see, I can get to that real quick. And there's, before I get into that, does anybody have any questions about the food service report before I start going through it?
Yes.
So for the food service report, when we go through the month of January, waiting for the February invoices to come in, we're still to the positive $786.72. We've sold, since January, 3,386 more lunches than we did at this time in FY '18. There may be, now, when we look at each of the months, please keep in mind that some, like last year, I think we had a couple of snow days, so that impacts the number of meals sold. So I don't want to, misinform everybody, just the number of days may be a little different, so that impacts it as well. But we're on the right track as far as working towards solvency. We're still trying to iron out pieces within the menu to try to make changes and satisfy any feedback that we're getting from parents. We're doing the best we can with that. We'll be putting in place the advisory board as part of the health and wellness, so that the advisory board will be meeting this Thursday with Dr. Carrero, a couple of parents, a couple of students, a couple of teachers, I believe. I'll be sitting in to pay, take notes and listen to the meeting, but focus on menu recommendations and see where that goes from there. And also Myra Maltonato will be there as well, the food service director. And so that's the food service piece. What else on this? We will be coming back to the committee in April. We're heading into that time frame where the school committee will need to vote to renew or continue the contract with Whitson's, that under the contract, if we're going to terminate, we need to give them 60 days' notice. My interpretation of 60 days' notice is 60 days from the last day of school. So that's right now, June 12th. And so we want to make sure we have plenty of time, and I want to make sure you have plenty of notice so you don't feel like you're being rushed in this. So if there's any concerns, questions about the program, that there's the opportunity to have those discussions. Questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Looks like a $1,200 swing from last month.
Mm-hmm.
And almost 1,400 more meals served. How is that possible?
Well, a couple of, not all 1,400, but a couple of days, like we had a couple more days this year than last year, as far as number of days, so that impacts number of meals sold, that will sell more, so that will show that.
Right, but
difference.
between December and January, it's almost 1,400 more meals served.
We were one less week in December because of the holiday break. So
That-
that's 5 days.
But that's not my point. My point is, the more meals served, you would think it'd be more profitable.
I understand, but sometimes when you're looking at expenses going through, that they're not flowing in that kind of manner that ties in with the meals necessarily. There's some expenses that may carry over into the next month. That's why you gotta look at the whole year when you're going through it.
Yeah.
Free and reduce effect there too.
Well, free and reduce in terms of reimbursements possible, but just putting that stuff in a timely manner. So, I should be seeing February's, I should be able to go in and see February's for that. And as far as when the reimbursement shows up, that will show up through the Department of Nutrition. Well, it'll show up like Do Not, that's the way it shows up on a direct deposit.
But I think that's a good point that Steve made about where this is the first year that we're tracking it like this. I think right now, until we have a full year of baseline data, the totals are probably the best columns to look at for now.
But I'm just going off this year.
Yeah, where are you? On the participation or on the financial on the bottom?
Well, under January,
Yeah.
2019, we served 5,000 meals,
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
right? Last month it was 3,600.
yep,
Last month, we were in the plus, 778. This month, we're minus 561. That's a $1,200 swing
yep.
for 1,400 more meals.
And again,
How is that?
well, part of it is when some of the expenses post, all right, so that can, when they post it on their side, it can impact that. That's why you gotta look at the whole year when you're comparing it. And it's some of the expenses when they come through from them and when they post them. They may be related to December or something along those lines. So there's a timing piece involved as far as when expenses post, and then number of payrolls that are posting in a month as well. So those are those pieces that we have to work through. And again, that's why I stay with the whole year. Waiting to see at the end of the year how the program performed in whole.
So meals monthly, that's not processed monthly?
When you say meals, well,
So you sold 5,000 meals in January,
yeah,
but you're saying not all that money has come in?
it's, as far as Department of Nutrition, that's possible.
Okay.
Possible.
I think,
And,
yeah,
no, I'm sorry, one other piece of it too, when they're posting receipts, if people have paid in advance, so if they bought like 20 or 30 meals, that may post in the month before and not the month after, in terms of receipts. You know, so if
It's
someone
not
buys,
as used.
I'm sorry?
It's not posted as they're used.
Right. So if you, let's say, Amy, you buy,
I
If
buy
someone fills up their
$100
card, say,
yes,
it goes on that month.
it'll go on that month. It'll post as a receipt, so that's what you're doing.
I mean, that's almost impossible to track this.
Well, the whole, that's why I'm saying, you gotta look at the whole year. You know, we've gotta get through the whole year, then you can determine if the program was solvent. So that's the variables that you gotta work through.
And so in the totals column,
Yes.
under the financial report, the
Yes.
difference,
Yes,
the 786, 72,
yes.
that's good.
Right now, that's good, because at this time, and again, please keep in mind, days, there have probably been a couple more days in January that we sold meals this year than compared to last year because of a couple snow days.
Yeah.
So I don't want to misinform you, I want you to keep that in mind, how some of this really calculates out when you look at the number of meal days. So, right now, we're to the positive. At this time last year, we were in the negative $10,919 and some change.
Okay.
You don't see that because
Okay.
we got the whole year in there. But I just added it up, the positives and the negatives, and it was a negative 10,919. Yeah, $10,912.92. It was in the negative. So we're on the right track in terms of solvency. And yes, we're still ironing out some things as far as trying to satisfy members of the community and what's available for lunch, but we gotta find the happy medium.
Yep.
You know, or we making a decision on what type of program you wanna have.
And I think that's a good point. $10,000 in the hole last year at this time, 786 to the good.
Right now,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, and that's why I want to be careful. Let's get through the whole year.
Yep.
And see how this works out.
But the goals of this program are solvency.
One.
Following nutritional guidelines.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And would those be the two primary?
Increasing participation. We want to give them what they want.
Right.
They want to, and we want to make everyone, I'd love to say we want to make everyone happy.
Right.
But that's not going to happen. You know, we've got to find a happy medium. And we want to continue to improve our lunches. We want to continue to improve presentation, especially at Fuller Meadow.
Yeah.
We just replaced the equipment. We've got a couple other things we think we have to address, as far as, you know, outside of equipment. So we're gonna keep working on that, because that's really one of the challenges, I say, is making Fuller Meadows better than, where it is right now.
Right.
You know, but we're working on that. Tasty Tuesday was yesterday, so they had the giraffe. Fat guy and the giraffe, they had that, and they had, it was yogurt, it was a smoothie, blueberry, strawberry, with Stonyfield yogurt, and if you had a dairy allergy, it was like a rice milk that they had, and they had the chef there, so they did a really nice job, I thought. You know, I think the kids enjoyed it, and, yeah, we'll just keep moving forward, and, you know, I'll answer any other questions that you get. Anything else, Fred?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Stay on top of it, don't,
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for keeping me.
don't let this
What are
slide.
the assistant superintendent of student services?
Hello, everybody. So tonight I just want to go over, we do this a little bit on a yearly basis. I was talking to Scott a little bit this morning as well. I think going into next year, we're going to revamp this report a little bit on yearly statistics and numbers in special ed, because we seem to be talking about it throughout the whole year. And so I will go through it tonight. It's in the drive. It's called a copy of the Student Services, TTSU Student Services Report, just to highlight a few things. But just so you know, going forward, I'd really like to present it in a different way, talk a little bit more about maybe some of the initiatives that we're working on and some of the things that we're doing within the department, as opposed to the concrete numbers. The numbers I feel like we talk about through the whole budget process and all of that. So, but that being said, I do think there's some really good overview information here in this report. Something to note as I go through it is that these numbers and these percentages are based on December 1st, 2018, so this school year, but December 1st, which is now, you know, a couple months old. We do it at that point, one, because that's the comparative data that we have year over year, and also that's a time that we start to pull together all the information for the apportionment for the tri-town. So we have to pull these numbers together anyway, so that's when we gather all this information. So if you jump down, and again, the report also includes all 3 towns for you to take a look at some point if you want to do any comparisons or just take a look at where we are as a tri-town, but specifically tonight we'll talk about Middleton. And so if you take a look, page, I think it's page 2, we can see the percentages, and as of December 1st, 2018, the number of students who qualified for special education services in the preschool was 11. Fuller Meadow had 35 students, and Howe Manning had 71 students. A couple things I want to point out there, and it'll be the next part about the percentages as well. Visually, it looks like there's a large jump between Fuller Meadow and Howe Manning in the numbers and the percentages of students on IEPs. That's actually true, and it's also something that doesn't concern me. We have to really look at developmental levels and expectations and curriculum as students move up the grades, and so it's not uncommon to see a higher percentage of students being identified with needs as they get a little bit older. So my expectation, and if you look at all 3 towns, is that the secondary schools in those towns would probably be higher percentages of special ed students than the lower elementary buildings. And as you can see, Fuller Meadow with those numbers is at 12.9% of its students on plans, and Howe Manning is at 19.7. What that averages out to is 16.8% for the district, and the state average is at about 17.4. So, as an editorial to that percentage, I still think we always have work to do to make sure that we're providing the best services for our students, as well as identifying the students that are eligible through the process, and that's students that we need to make sure are brought to our attention that have needs, and also students that are brought up that may need extra support but don't qualify for special ed services. We need to make sure that we're following the process set forth for us by the state and holding true to that. So 16.8% for the district. It's down by 1.3% from last year. I also caution with this report that we are a small district, and those are small numbers, so percentages fluctuate greatly just based on a small handful of students. So, we could be at 20% because of 10 students, or we could be down to, 15% because of a few students. So I just, want to throw that caution out there as well. The other part before we move on from this is I do want to show you, so we have 11, as of December 1st, we had 11 students in the preschool on IEPs, but the total enrollment for the preschool, for the Middleton preschool, was 81 students. And if you look at Boxford and you look at Topsfield, just as a note, Middleton is double the amount of students in our preschool program here at Middleton.
Yeah.
That's large, right? That stood out to me as I was looking at it. I knew it was a bigger program than the other 2, but doubling the amount of kids, basically with the same amount of special ed kids, really is telling to me that there's a not only a need, but a desire for a community preschool that obviously is serving our special ed students, but there's clearly a drive in this community for a preschool to be associated with the public schools for all parents, right? So I think that's something that I want to explore further as we go forward in the next couple of years, to really take a look at the structures that we have in place, the amount of offerings that we have, and what we can do to tweak that, because I think special ed or non-special ed, I think if students can start with us at an early age, it's really a benefit in a lot of ways for us to get to know the students, get to know the families, and it just becomes, in a K to 6, you have less time with parents to begin with, so any extended time that we can have with them and with the kids, I think is great. So that was just something that struck me, and I wanted to make sure I put out there as well. I think our preschool is extremely well regarded in the community, and I want to explore opportunities to see what we can do with it in the future.
Great.
The other major component of this report that I want to talk about is on page 3. And this directly correlates with all of our conversations over the past several years about the inclusive practices for students on IEPs. And so this chart really shows, strictly based on IEP percentages, how we're doing with inclusive practices, right? Not our skill set, but how many students are being included as opposed to being pulled out for their services. And if you look at the little chart right there, a full inclusion is defined as at least 80% of the time the student is spending in the general ed classroom. Partial inclusion is 40% to 79%, they're in the general ed classroom, and then substantially separate is less than 40%, and other would be students that attend other schools. So we write, as of December 1st, a little over 56% of students were in full inclusion, so they're spending at least 80% of their day in the general ed classroom. And then 28% or so are in partial inclusion, between that 40 and 79%. What that, to me, that 40 to 79 is a very broad range. Like if they're at 78 or 70%, that's a lot more than if they're at 43% in the classroom. That's a big range. But just working on that, what I'm happy to see is that we are, about 80% of our students, 85% of our students are in partial or full inclusion for their whole day. What I'd like to see is a little bit more of a trend as you see in Topsfield there, and I will call it out for them. They've really made the move over the past couple of years to more co-teaching classrooms, but also just not the co-teaching piece of it. They really look to do as much inclusion as possible. One of the drivers in that was a couple of years ago, we added a position, we revamped a position. It wasn't actually the addition of a position. We refocused a position, entitled it a Program and Inclusion Coordinator. So Topsfield doesn't have two special ed coordinators. They have one special ed coordinator and one program and inclusion coordinator. And that person has really been able to work with the special ed staff and the general ed staff on helping modify curriculum, or what does specially designed instruction look like in the general ed classroom, and really has identified a lot of curriculum areas that can work on. And I think that number, to me, is a pretty direct comparison to some of that work that's been done. I'm happy to see that, because that was a position we put in, and we, as we do a lot, we'll say, we think this is right, let's follow it for a couple of years, see what effects it has, and I think we've seen some really fantastic movement in that area. So, again, just like highlights or preludes to some things that might be coming in the future. I think that was a really good move over there. And then, the financials are in here. Again, we talk a lot about them, but circuit breaker is definitely one of our larger offsets year to year. Just a really quick snapshot. So with circuit breaker, you get reimbursed from the state up to 75%, although it has not been funded at 75%, and Scott has talked a lot about that as well, of student cost over the foundation budget. So the 4 times foundation budget is about $45,000. So if a student's education costs more than that amount, you get reimbursed on the difference, right? So it's not all of it. If they crest that number, it's not, okay, you get reimbursed on all of it, it's just the difference. So if a child's education costs $54,000, you get reimbursed on $10,000, the difference between 4 times foundation. So in Middleton last year, our net claim, so above and beyond the $44,500 for every student, our net claim was almost $195,000, which was reimbursed at 72% this year. So this fiscal year, you also get reimbursed the following year. So this fiscal year, we realized the reimbursement of about $140,000 for claims that we put in FY18. Does that make sense? That's
Yep.
a roundabout.
No.
No, it was a great explanation.
Yeah, really thorough, thank you.
And then some other funding sources that definitely have an effect on our budgeting is Medicaid reimbursement. So Medicaid reimbursement is students who would otherwise qualify for related services through Medicaid. If they access them through our services, we can put in for reimbursement from the state. So there is a note on this one, is that, so Middleton received almost $29,000 in Medicaid reimbursement, which for our size town is a good amount of money. That does not come back directly into our budget. That goes back into the town's general fund. Okay, so that is definitely a school reimbursement piece that we make sure that we put in for and get back, but it does not come back directly to our budget, so that you won't see a direct offset in the operating budget from Medicaid, from Medicare on our numbers. It goes into the town's general fund. Our biggest grant is an entitlement grant. It's the 240 IDEA grant. That has remained stable over the past 5 years, which is good. I have no reason to expect it would get, that there would be any movement on that. That's been about $170,000 year over year. And then we receive a few grants, an early childhood grant at about $11,000. Again, it has remained stable year over year. The next part, the 2 program improvement grants, which are the professional development grants. This is the last time I'll talk about them, because this is year 2. Those are the ones that they cut from us 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it just didn't show up, and then in October, they said, oh yeah, we're not able to fund it, and then last year, they just told us very early it was not gonna come. It seems like it's gone forever, which is what we kind of talked about. So we have added about $5,000 in the operating budget. We did it last year. We're proposing it this year again, $2,500 per school to be earmarked for special ed professional development, because that's a direct replacement for this grant. We are well within the planning stages of summer programming. I guess that's, on one hand, a good thing, but it's a long process. All of our programs will take place again over at Howe Manning, which is really an incredible venue to hold it in. Not only is the school set up really great for the summer programs, but we're gonna really make an effort to connect with the Middleton Rec program this year to expand into providing social skills and social pragmatic opportunities for our students with non-special ed peers. There's been a lot of feedback that we have some really great direct service, but the opportunity to practice skills is really something that should be paramount. And so we're working with the rec right now to figure out a way to partner with them. It happened years ago. I think our students would go out to the rec program and try to join in on some of the activities that were taking place out there. Over the years, that's gotten a little bit more complicated, so what we're looking at is trying to offer some sort of exploratory programs as part of our program, and we're gonna invite the rec kids into us. And I think it'll just be a little bit more structured for us to make sure that we're targeting our opportunities as well. It's not just, it's not camp. Ours is not camp, it's instruction, and so we wanna make sure it's very targeted. So we're gonna take a little bit of control over that and offer it in-house. And then the other piece of this that I just want to always mention is I just want to thank the support of the CPAC. Year over year, they are a board that I stay in touch with and really talk about different things that are going on in the district, get their feedback, get their opinions on a lot of things. They also are now in their 3rd year of running a very successful grant program. Their carnival, they have a carnival in the spring over at Masco. That is their major fundraising opportunity, and from that, they've been able to offer grants now. For the 3rd year, they do $500 per building across the tri-town, which is really a great opportunity for teachers to put in requests for certain items that, they want to try or pilot or that they haven't received. So I want to thank them for their support and also for everything that they do for the kids. Any questions on all of that? Should have stopped halfway through. Good?
Oh, good.
I have a question.
Yeah?
When you outlined the state average
Yeah.
of 70%, what does that mean to us? Like, are we trying, why does that, why does our figure, how does it relate?
Yeah, so the state average of students identified was
Yeah,
not a lot.
okay.
Just a benchmark, really,
Okay.
to be honest.
Well, if you're only seeing 10% on our numbers, then we're not identifying enough.
Yeah, I think
If we're seeing 27% that we're over
Right.
identifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's 17.5%, taking into account the differences in Massachusetts in the cities and towns. It really is, the drastic shifts is what I would really look for. Mark's absolutely right. When I was in Medfield as the director, our percentage was 11% students identified. And I took the exact point of, that seems actually a little low, right? That 11%, I want to really look to make sure that we're having processes in place to identify all students that we need to identify. That being said, I think when I got here, our percentages were 21%, and I raised the same eyebrow and kind of said, that surprises me a little bit. That seems like it's a little high. Let's, dive deep into why or what might be happening with identification rates. The real philosophy around percentages is not, it shouldn't be about a number. It's not about a number, right? If we were at 20%, if we were at 30%, and we were following process and really identifying the kids that needed that support, then we're at 30%. And if we were at 5%, then we're at 5%. I think the one thing you just want to always keep an eye on is special education is a very specific intervention with very specific criteria intended for kids with disabilities. And so we staff and we approach things in that way. And so if you use it more as an intervention model for students that have some sort of need, but they don't have a disability, then what is true to special ed and specially designed instruction becomes a little unclear, right? Which is why what we do a lot of work for our response to intervention model. We have our reading specialists, our math specialists, all of our other interventionists that can support kids and work with kids that don't have a level of disability that qualifies them for an IEP, but are still getting the support. And then within special ed, we can make sure we're identifying and really putting every support that we have in place to help those students.
Thanks.
Is this the report when you normally, or maybe it's a different one, but when you break out?
Right, it is.
Yeah,
I took it out.
was looking for that. Oh,
I took
you
it
were.
out, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Last year, we talked a lot about that, and I remember going into last year, and I really wanted to talk about students' emotional needs. And the percentages don't tell the story.
Okay.
And especially and that's why I kind of talked a little bit about it with our numbers in relation to percentages. Because after last year's and going into this year's, what I did, not for any reason, I just said, okay, this is the number of students we have. If I just change 3 students' disabilities from specific learning disability to emotional, like what is the percentage change? Or if I do 10, and it was huge swings in percentages based on just a few kids. And so I just felt that chart was not really indicative of what, it wasn't showing what I really wanted to express to the committee. So I did take that out, and obviously what would be a more accurate representation would be to use actual numbers of students, and I'm not gonna do that. Because some disability categories, we have very small numbers. We, intellectual disability or some of the low incidence disabilities might be 2 or 3 students. And once you start to talk about very low numbers like that, yeah, I always get concerned about identification of needs. So that's why it's not in there. I will tell you, if I had put it in there, there's not major swings. We're always gonna be we're always gonna have the highest percentage of students and the highest number of students identified as specific learning disability. That's gonna be where we're at. Communication is always a high one. Emotional disability is actually a lower category, but again, that's students identified with emotional disabilities. That's not our conversation about student social needs in general. But there wasn't a huge swing, and again, it wasn't telling the story I really wanted. I just was concerned that it would reflect that, it's more numbers than percentages, I guess.
And then going back to the full inclusion versus the partial,
Yeah.
I agree with you
Yeah.
that 40 to 80%
hard.
doesn't tell a story. Do you think that you could, I'm sure this is what you have to present, and I don't want to give you more work.
Well,
but
those are the state categories.
I would
That's
be really
the, yeah.
curious what that 40 to 80%
How
would
close
look
it's
like
on
if
either
it
side.
was. Yeah, because I think this year,
Yep.
with the, the co-teaching model
Yep.
and this huge amount of increased
Yep.
professional development towards social and emotional learning and all the buzzwords, I feel like this would connect to our story.
Yeah.
That number, even though it's still a large number, I think you would see less.
I would agree.
it'd be
There's
nice
no
to-
doubt in my mind. I will do that. I'll pull
Okay.
that together, because I actually would like to see, yeah. We'll have to go kid by kid, because it's on all the IEPs. You can't run a number on that because it's. But I agree with you. I think if we
Rainy
pull
day
that together,
project.
it's gonna be, much higher to the 79% than it is to the 40%, no doubt.
Kristen,
Right.
also, your point about the 17%, I think if you run a incredibly well-run program and you're identifying and helping kids, word may spread, and all of a sudden Middleton becomes more desirable to kids with disabilities, and all of a sudden that number goes up. I think that could sway it too, I don't know if that makes a difference, but it's something to be on the lookout for, right?
Definitely. Definitely. And we've had several people move in over the past couple of years and cite that exactly
Right.
to that point. We know about the services, we're very excited to be here.
Yeah,
Yep.
not necessarily, yeah,
Okay.
the taxes are still the
Thanks.
same as everyone else's.
And so the other document I just want to call your attention to, in there is, I guess it looks like a scan. It says, main office, 18. It's just a representation of the amount of visits to the nurse's office. And I do this just because every time I see it, it just strikes me as a wow. So Fuller Meadow is on, near the end, is on page 5. And what you can see is there's planned visits and unplanned visits. And so last year, now this is the 17, this is last school year, because we want it to be a full school year, so it was the 17-18 school year. So last school year, there were total visits to Fuller Meadow the nurse's office of 2,694, and at Hal Manning, there were 4,641 visits. So the nurses in Middleton saw students 7,335 times in their office. There's always a note on here, and this comes from our nurse leader. She always puts a note that these numbers only include student visits, because
Right.
a number of staff will, on a daily basis, go into the nurse's office and say, I have a headache, or you have any aspirin or any of that. So we don't track those in the same way, but there are a number of those. And the only, I think this number speaks for itself, but I actually think it needs to be said that there's also several students with complex medical needs, that these visits are not just you walk in and you grab a Band-Aid and you're out. Some of them are,
Yeah.
right? Some of them definitely are. But some of them are very intensive needs that require multiple visits and a lot of attention. So thank you to the nurses, I guess, is that comment.
The parent notification seems really low for the number of visits. Right? Am I reading this right?
339 versus 17.
The 339, yeah. Yep. I can look into that number. I don't know why that
You
would
need
be.
a full-time.
I don't know what their yeah. I mean, everything is every single visit is documented.
Right?
It might even be just a quick,
There's a Band-Aid.
I need to-
Right, so I don't
Like
think
I
those
said,
aren't
Go
calls.
see the
that-
nurse, who's your
Or-
person to
Right,
go talk
so
to.
then this would be
you know.
the amount of more like you're sent home because there's a fever.
Exactly.
Or,
It might be just a visit. Classroom
Yeah.
break, go up and see the nurse.
I know, but that's so interesting. If that is an accurate reflection, think of how many times people are just checking in.
Right.
Well, and I think that goes along with our conversation, right?
Yes.
The nurse's office becomes a safe haven for
Right.
a lot of students.
Yeah.
Right,
And so
exactly.
it is definitely not just a medical place anymore. It's
Social.
it becomes a social, it absolutely becomes a place that kids
Check
feel
in.
very comfortable, and for 5 minutes, their anxiety goes down, and they are well connected with the nurse, and, it serves that purpose for a lot of kids.
Yeah, and that,
I was at a dinner with several couples, and they were talking about bullying, and I brought up the piece that we've talked about making connections with the students and finding, they were just blown away that stuff's happening, yeah, that it's being looked at that level, and the connection between bullying and no connections and school violence and that sort of thing. So they were really amazed that we're looking at it at that level, so really good feedback.
It's good to hear.
It was cool to be the smart guy in the room too.
attaboy, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Amy. Quick,
Go.
right there, Steve, right there.
There you go.
Thank you. Oh, that felt
And then the
good.
only other bullet point under me was Empowered Brain. That's the brain power, that's the Google Glass that we have been talking about it. So we had the first part of the training with the staff that are gonna be using the Google Glass, and it was fascinating to watch, and they are very excited about it. So they've been using them for about 2 weeks, and then we have the trainer coming back out to do a second follow-up training with it. There's nothing, it was just
Oh,
my,
it's nothing
well,
on the
yeah, it
drive,
just
okay.
was
All
under
right,
my. So that is, the training's well underway, it'll be working with kids. I'd like to have them kind of end of year come back to the committee with the glasses to really show you the data that they've gathered. At that point, we will have, full access to the tracking and all of that. And, but yeah, we all put them on, and they did all the activities, and it's moving forward. I think it's gonna be fascinating to see how it supports our students.
That's great.
Definite word is getting out that Middleton has these.
Yeah,
as
we're getting
well.
a lot of calls.
And we're getting parents from other communities saying, hey, we would love to be a part of this. And, isn't the summer program over in Middleton? Any chance that they can be,
Oh, good.
tried out there? And so,
Yeah.
you know,
we
good,
had, I went to,
really good feedback.
I went to the Learn Launch conference with a couple other people, which is really a technology and a ed tech incubator type of
Yep.
workshop. And we were all having lunch, and it was staff from Topsfield, Boxford, and Middleton. And the owner of the company came over to say hi, and he brought over the Google Glasses. And we all started to try them, and the staff from the other two towns started to get very excited and turned to me and said, "Oh, can we buy these?" And I said, "Well, we already have them."
Right.
"Oh, well, come here." I said, "No, they're in Middleton right now. Like, we're gonna use them there." So, a lot of excitement around them and intrigue.
Excellent.
That's great.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Andy. Greetings. Thanks for joining us.
Andy, we know you don't have any night meetings, so we thought it'd be good to invite you to one.
Great, I had a night off.
You know what I mean? Yeah, we thought, why not?
How
Thank you
much-
for coming.
How much time do you have?
Much time as you need.
Okay. Great. Well, we're moving into new business. So, all right. Global Child update.
Yep, Global Child update is, hold on one sec, let me go back to the drive. So we got, in the drive, you'll see a folder that reads Global Child. And it's empty. Well, that's interesting. Is it empty on your end?
Yeah.
Oh, please,
You know what? It's under minutes needing approval.
that's where it is, thank you very much.
Yep.
Yes, it is, it's in the wrong folder, thank you, Amy. So two things, if you click on the Word doc that says Global Child Spring 2019, good catch, you'll see the enrollments for the spring, 49 students in total in between Fuller Meadow and Howe Manning. And then more so what I wanted to point out to you, if you read the sponsor letter, Tri-Town, it's the PDF. I'll slide these over to the right folder in a minute, but very nice letter from Magdala, who serves as a coordinator for the programs. And you don't necessarily read the whole thing because it's 3 pages long, but on the first page, if you go down to the bottom of the first page, just a very responsive comment from our friends at Global Child, who are continuing to work to build the program in the manner in which, we have identified. Kristen, myself, James, have met with, help me out, Diane?
Yes.
Yes, have met with Diane.
Thanks.
Diana, thank you, in terms of talking about expectations, and you can see overall enrollment there for Boxford, Middleton, and Topsfield, and then, she goes on a little bit further down on page 2. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Middleton School Committee. Your continuous support provides access to foreign language education for students who may not have the resources to attend, and just a very nice letter overall,
Yeah.
and very responsive to our continued dialogue and conversation with that group, so just wanted to point that out more than anything. As an FYI, and again, I will slide those over to the correct folder as we move on here.
Have we gotten any feedback that it's been helpful?
I have not heard anything in either direction.
Yeah, I've heard really good things. Yes,
Excellent. Since our meeting, and
yes,
great,
yep.
it's good to hear. James, Diane, anything come to you?
I have not heard anything.
Okay.
Scott, I'm noticing that we don't have a principal report on here.
We didn't, and that was
Okay.
because of, we knew budget.
intentional?
Yeah, we're kind of,
Okay.
we really budget and capital.
Okay.
We know that that's going to be really the chunk of the meeting.
Okay.
And so we will certainly re-engage. Anything folks have that you're welcome to share, but I know that,
I do have one
yeah,
request.
yeah.
The STEAM Carnival is scheduled for May 30th at Howe Manning from 5 to 7. And last year, we used
What date?
the Thursday,
that?
May 30th.
May 30, great.
From 5 to 7 at Howe Manning.
Yeah.
And last year, we were able to use student activity account money to defray the costs of some of the materials for that. So I told Katie Nasser that I would come back this year and ask again if we could use student activity account money up to $2,000. Hopefully that you would approve that, so that she can start planning and, but I know that I can't access that money without getting permission from you. So I wanted to just come to you, and it would be up to $2,000. I don't know that it would be that amount, but.
And this is the second year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think they're
great
looking for
last year.
bigger, more participation from teachers. And I know they've started planning, but they know that they need approval from you for the money.
So,
Which account are you looking for money?
Student activity account, which is now the gift account. It's now the gift
Yeah,
account. So all the student activity account money was shifted into the gift account, so we would be accessing the gift account at Fuller Meadow School.
Thank you.
Which is what that was established for,
Right.
correct. Yeah.
that type of event.
Yeah. So does anyone want to make the motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mark.
Well,
Did you just make a motion to
Yes.
approve that?
Yes.
approve the
Up
use
to
of the gift, Fuller Meadow gift account funds up to $2,000 at the discretion of the principal and Katie Nasser.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll second that.
M-O-R-E-S-C-H.
Any discussion?
Fred, are you
No.
good with that?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
It's okay with the chair, maybe we can slide number 2 down.
Yes.
Just where we have the town manager here and take advantage of the time that we have with Andy as we kind of lead into the operating budget discussion.
Yes, perfect.
Great.
Okay. To the operating budget?
Number 3, the operating budget, 20, FY 20.
So we
operating
will
budget.
turn this over to Steve in a minute, who I think will probably turn it over to Andy. But in the drive, you'll see a Middleton adjustment scenario, 3619, it's a PDF. And in that PDF, everything above the orange line on that document, you'll see those were items that were approved. We had some decreases in insurance, and we did adjustments in budgeted levels. We have one more decrease in insurance. We got some more good news from Town Hall in terms of adjusting that down, and Steve will walk us through that. And then below the orange line, we have additional recommendations. The charge, as you may recall from the committee, was for us to journey towards a 5%. We had come in at 9 originally. And then the item which necessitated Andy's being here tonight, as you may recall, at the very top of that page, we had possibly applying funding from Special Ed Stabilization Fund. And we had that as a to be discussed, that had not been approved, or no action had happened on that. And so initial report is that we will not be able to proceed with that 100,000. And so at the very bottom of the page, in the orange highlight there, we have other items for discussion to bring to the committee's attention that would total around $100,000, that would get us to the 5%. And again, Steve will walk us through all of this, but I am gonna turn it over to Steve to pick this up where I'm leaving off, and then I'm sure we'll hear from Andy in terms of special ed stabilization, so.
Go, Steve.
Over to Steve.
All right, good evening. Do we want to start with the Special Education Stabilization Fund? Do you want to start with that
Sure.
piece first? Originally, when we put together our adjustment sheet, after we proposed the draft one of the budget, I had the thought of trying to access Special Ed Stabilization Fund, and getting feedback from the town hall that mechanically, my understanding of it, this is where I need a little help understanding how it works, that we may not be able to access it in that manner to defray some of the costs associated with the proposed budget. So if it's okay with the chair, I just would ask if Mr. Sheen could walk us through that piece of it, so it's just a better understanding, and then we can continue through the rest of the recommendations for discussion.
Sounds good.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come in this evening. So this is, so we just created the Special Ed Stabilization Fund last year, 2 years ago. We've only funded it to about 150,000, little hair over that with interest, about 150,000, say. The intent of that was, when we created it, was to be able to trim off or smooth some of those spikes in special ed costs. We understand that it's a very unpredictable cost center for you all, and that there are going to be spikes that you can't really control, that are beyond your control. So it works, it helps us in order to be able to tap into that reserve fund or stabilization fund in order to save the impact on the general fund budget. But this would be the first time that we're using it. We're not fully capitalized in that stabilization fund, and so we want to be sure that that we're embarking on the right path this initial time. it's, you know, it's, like I said, it was intended to address the spikes, and I don't want this to come across
No,
wrong. It wasn't intended to be an easy source of revenue, I guess. And I'm not saying that it is. We just need to know, you know, what the implications would be if the school committee wasn't to use the stabilization fund, and what the implications would be for the you know, the overall budget. So I didn't mean to sort of react
not at all.
too quickly this morning.
No.
But in light of the fact that there was a meeting tonight, just wanted to kind of be sure that we were all dealing with the same information.
No,
Oh, go ahead, Kristen.
So the max we can have in there is 150?
no.
No.
What we have in there now is 150 and change. We had set an initial target of 350,000. With an overall target of the 5-year, a balance equal to the most recent 5 years' actual spent spending. And so the initial target balance was 350. We're at 150,
Plus
600.
Okay.
Is there a law state law that we can only have a certain percentage? Or is it the other fund?
That's
It's
reserve.
the other,
That's
it's the,
reserve.
I think it's the reserve fund.
Okay.
2% exclusive.
2%, yeah.
So, this is, you know, this is a reserve fund. We have a couple of different reserve funds or stabilization funds. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility, so it's beneficial for all of us. But we just want to be sure that we're going down the right path.
So then what would be the next step if, as a school committee, we're recommending that we use this money? Or are you saying that that's not even for us
No,
to do?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. I think what we need to see is where the impact is coming from, where the spike for fiscal '20 is coming from, and how that compares to from recent years' budgets. So, and that may be in there, and you know, it's not obvious to me. So.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it. We had our, on Saturday, Andy and his team, the Board of Selectmen, FinCom, they had their Saturday meeting. Here, we walked through operating budget. I think Costa had asked to talk about operating budget first. We kind of touched upon operating budget, walked the team through sort of where we were operating budget-wise. Said we don't want to get into too many details because we hadn't vetted everything with the school committee yet, but we were heading towards, you know, a guideline number from the direction from the school committee. And then we also gave a capital update as well for Middleton in terms of some of the items that we have in the capital plan. And so I think from the perspective, and Matt, I'm going to ask you to jump in here as well, you know, I think when we put sort of the draft one budget together, as we were building the budget, thinking about requests and things along those lines, the access to it for this year was rooted in, you know, a higher number, right, a higher tuition-based number. And as Matt looks at future years, that number not going higher beyond that, right? So sort of it being that peak year and then, you know, either stabilizing or starting to head in the other direction. Am I correctly?
Yeah, I can project out current students, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
can project out current students for the next 3 or 4 years. So that being said, I would confidently say that it most likely will not be more than this year, and odds are that it will be less over the next several years, projecting out the current students. Again, 2 move-ins, 3 move-ins, that's
Right.
all changes, but based on all of the information that we know, if I did a 4-year look, including this fiscal year, my anticipation would be this will probably be the highest of the next 3 fiscal years.
And it's not going to be a precipitous drop in the next 3 years, but it's going to trend down, correct?
It'll trend down.
Yeah.
Correct. It'll trend down each year.
So I think that was sort of the, you know, rationale. I think this is new to all of us, Andy, so I think your point is well taken, right? Like, this is the first town we have a stabilization fund in, which is great. Like we kept saying, we've used Middleton as the example over and over again in the 3 towns that they have the belt and suspenders, with the reserve fund and with the stabilization fund. And so I think as we sort of forge this path, I think whatever we work on here, I think it will serve as a good model for, what we do in the other two towns. Boxford's beginning a dialogue around, should we start a stabilization fund? Topsfield's beginning a dialogue of, should we start a reserve fund, right? So there's definitely movement in the other two towns to get to a point that where Middleton is. I don't know if we'll solve what I'm about to say tonight, but I think it would be good if we could identify what is the process? We're kind of looking at it as a school committee of saying like, okay, we, always kind of think of it as like, we have it peak, we have sort of a peak year coming, right, based on where we've been. Maybe the town wants to access more money into it or put more money into it before it's accessed out. Like, that's certainly understandable if that's sort of a financial strategy from the town perspective. But I think working that out, so if we decide not on the 100 this year, if that's sort of what the hold hand decision is from all the partners in town, I think coming up with a policy is too strong of a word, but a procedure or a process or a protocol that, like an if-then statement, right? If
Right.
you have a 3-year high average, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but just so we know, because now we're into, our public hearing for our budget will be April. And so tonight is the night that we're hope to walk out of this meeting, like, feeling pretty good about, okay, our budget's pretty good, let's go out and, start to have conversations with folks if we need to have conversations based upon, any sort of reorganizations that are happening or whatever the case may be. And so if that 100, if we decide handhold not on the 100, as you can see in the orange section there that Steve put together, there are some items for discussion that we would have to offset that 100.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think it serves any of us to have a rigid framework.
Yeah.
I think just a sort of understanding, if whenever you put any number to it, it's gonna be arbitrary.
Yes.
And so if we say, if there's a 10% spike.
Right.
And I don't even know if 10% is reasonable.
Sure.
There could be a year that we're at 9.5, and it would make sense in light of the whole picture.
Yeah.
To dip into the stabilization.
Yep.
And there could be other years where the spike is 11, and for, whatever other reasons, it wouldn't make sense, it wouldn't be prudent to go into it, so we just need to kind of understand that, or collectively understand that.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having as much in that fund as we possibly can, just conservatively, in case we have a monster year where it triples what we're thinking is a high year this year.
Sure.
Especially since we've had some relief in the insurance.
Yeah.
That but with that being said, I still think if this is a peak year, I feel like using some to offset that, maybe it's 50,000
Right.
versus 100.
Sure.
And continue to leave as much in there as we can. I feel like that's the prudent thing to do as a previous town administrator always had millions of dollars in reserve funds at the town, just for that. I'll wait for Greenberg to stop.
I'm sorry, I was
No,
talking.
I know you were. That's why I'm waiting for you to stop. I was just saying, we could all hear you. I was just saying, I feel like leaving as much in there as we can to be prudent, and in case we have a major spike, is prudent. But if this is a spike, that using some of it, and I don't know if it's half, 50% or what, but I feel like the town always has had big coffers, not coffers, big reserve funds just for these type of things. So I feel like it's the prudent thing to do, but
Matt,
also open to.
sorry, Matt. The spike has nothing to do with the special ed though, right? Special ed is,
No, it's basically the tuitions and transportation. So out-of-district tuition, if I look at out-of-district tuitions and transportation for this year, for FY '20, and then 21, 22, and 23. 21, 22, and 23, I anticipate, because students are aging out into Masco, that we will have a reduction in cost in tuition and transportation in those next 3 years. That's what I know of the kids. So if kids come in and take those kids' places for tuitions,
Right.
then it remains stable. But there are are several students that tuitions are very high, will be aging out of Tri-Town over the next 3 fiscal years. Not FY '20, FY '21, '22, and '23.
And so that prompted a discussion on the team around, okay, as we work to build this budget to bring forward to the committee in terms of the draft 1 model, you know, is that a lever that can be pulled? Is it something that we want to pull as we think about, you know, the budget development process? You know, I think Brian said it well, too, on Saturday when we talked. He said, you know, as we mentioned, as we talked about it and just had a dialogue about it, you know, it was, oh, so you'll be at 6% plus 100,000 as opposed to 5%. You know what I mean? It's like just viewing it differently. It's, you're really at 6% and hoping to access 100,000 from the reserve fund as opposed to the 5%, which is, you know, our guideline.
And just a guideline, not a hard, fast line in the sand.
Right.
Yep.
This adjustment sheet, right now, none of that money from the stabilization funds being used, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Based on feedback, Freddie, that we received from Town Hall today, we went back in before tonight and made adjustments to that.
So we're down to 7.2%.
We are almost there, Kristen. There's one
Right.
little piece. See where it says to be approved by Middleton School Committee? We had that one final little dip in insurance
Yep,
from a 1%. We were down to 1%, and I think, Andy, it's 0.08.
yep.
Down to negative .08, something like that, so it's
So it's
just,
going down.
yeah.
There's 25, so as soon as we approve that, it's, you know, as a committee, we would probably approve that.
Yep.
That would take us to, correct, to 7.2.
So, can I just circle back to the special education, just so we get this? So Andy, is this, it's off the table on our budget sheet, but is it something that should be off the table in our minds as well? Or is it something that we should be deliberating our budget, kind of put that on the side? And then, when do we revisit it, if we still think it's important?
Right, so, excuse me, I wouldn't take it out and discard it completely. I think some work has to happen among Steve and Scott and Sarah Wood and I,
Okay.
so that we fully understand the full picture. And believe me, I don't want to slow your process down, your budget process down. We already feel on the town side like we're behind where we normally are. And that's nobody's responsibility, really. It's just kind of the way things have evolved this year. There's silence on Beacon Hill. There's big cost centers that really haven't become clear to us yet. So we feel like usually when we have the Saturday meeting that we had last week,
Yeah.
we're usually in a much better place or a more knowledgeable place. We know where we're going to be. So I don't want to
Dissuade.
put us
Yeah.
even further behind
Yeah.
where we would like to feel or like to be. But we do want to make sure that we're being prudent in the use of the stabilization.
Sure. And, you know, Mark's point's a valid one, too.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think it can happen pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, for the purposes of tonight, we'll just put that aside, and we'll discuss the other items. And then, when Steve and Scott get back to us after connecting with you, then we'll know, right? Is that how we'll view that?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, depending upon how the dialogue and debate and discussion goes tonight,
Yeah.
it might necessitate an additional school committee meeting between now and the April meeting.
Okay,
But it would be pretty quick.
It would be pretty quick.
okay.
So most of us can be available for a quick meeting, I think,
Yeah,
generally speaking for you two.
have to be
Freddie.
5:30, it could be
Freddie.
9.
Maybe not on time, but.
Hey, there was a line.
Mark, he was looking at me, but I think that might have been directed towards you.
There was a line
Yeah,
over
yeah.
at Richardson when I went to get Steve's shake.
But you drank it, I got nothing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, Steve, do you want to walk us through the rest of the document?
Yes, ma'am, I can do that, and do you want to, as we go through each one, discuss and make a motion for each, because then we'll memorialize each one.
That sounds perfect.
Well, the problem is if you move and approve something and then we need to go back and
Then you can do that.
change it, we can do that
Yeah,
anyway.
you can do
Okay.
that. This is,
All right.
yeah,
You're
there's
in
our-
charge, Steve.
you have that
Don't
flexibility.
listen to me.
No, I'm listening to you. Okay. Yeah, Fred's over there.
I think Andy's point too, is just important to stay, about, feeling a little behind. Just, all three towns, I think, are kind of feeling that right now. And so just, if you feel a need for expediency on our part, just know that it's more of the three-town approach and trying to move
Okay.
the three budgets down the road. So please don't, if it feels rushed, please tell us, because we're just trying to
Oh, yeah.
be
So-
expedient across the three.
I didn't say that.
Just so I can understand, is this an order, like, I get that by doing this, it decreases our budget. Is this an order of importance, or, like,
Yeah.
that
A little
confuses
bit,
me
a little
in
bit,
that.
a little bit. When we get to the insurance one, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Then we'll get into the additional recommendations, so when we talk about the central office stuff, that's, just go with that, take those, because it's not gonna fly in all three towns.
Okay.
So those two
All right.
central office pieces can come off. Then there may be some discussion about a couple of the other components as we get further into it. And then you can vote those, and then the last three are, again, for further discussion. And if the committee wants to hold at that point to see where our discussion goes with Mr. Sheehan, Sarah, and Dr. Morrison, then we can do that as well. So it's the will of the committee, is how far you want to go.
And just to jump in before Steve continues, just please know that we build the budget together, and then we sort of have conversations about how do we take it apart. So it's not a matter of like, somebody was just sitting in office saying, you know what, we'll bring these to school committee. This discussion has happened with the whole leadership team in Middleton.
Okay.
So just know that it has that behind it.
All right, ready to go? Okay, so the first one for the committee's consideration is to the $25,000 additional decrease in the health insurance, that the premium will, it won't be an increase, it will be a minor decrease of about 0.008%, or 0.08%, whatever it is. But so that's a $25,000 reduction that we're proposing from the health insurance line for the school committee to approve.
So that's easy, unless there's any chance that they're gonna come back and bump it up again between now and then. Okay, done. So moved.
So
Second.
you're making that motion, Kristen seconds, all in favor? Aye.
The next one for the committee would be the reduction for what would be the operations supervisor at central office. That value is $28,044. That would be the proposed salary plus the travel. And again, it doesn't look like we're gonna have the support in all three towns, so we're recommending pulling it for this fiscal year, and then we'll reevaluate and see if it should be something we propose in '21.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is the central office clerical. That was to add additional clerical support for the director of curriculum and director of ed tech. Again, we don't think it's gonna have,
Do you have this, Andy? You need to see it?
I have the version from this morning.
right, so it is,
Same thing we have?
yes, it's just, the last three are not in there. So if he wants to sit next to me, you're more than welcome to sit next to me. Look at it, but either way, central office clerical is not gonna carry the day, we don't think, in the three towns. So again, that'll be something that we'll revisit with the two my directors and go from there and see if we want to pre-propose it for FY '21.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
The next one is being described as the program reconfiguration.
Which program?
Program reconfiguration. And
Put it in like this, Lori. Just put it in like that. Yep.
for FY '20. And that would be putting in enhancements and efficiencies within the two schools. And that is there for the school committee's consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Wait, I'm confused. Consideration for removing it?
Reducing the budget by the $40,000.
Right, program reconfiguration. To improve efficiency and enhancement of how we deliver some programs within the schools.
Okay.
Investigating.
Yes, so,
Yep.
so Mark made the motion, Freddie second. Did you have any discussion, or you? No? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Next is professional development stipends, after leadership team met, reducing professional development stipends by $5,000.
So these are obviously not contracted,
Right,
contract,
right.
my language is off here, but, okay.
And we stripped a lot already, right?
And
I
it-
thought
and
you
I-
went through it, was it last year or 2 years ago? You went through it and,
Well, each year, when we go through the budget process, and each of the department heads go through and talk about their programs, that Christine does go through in detail with regard to professional development. And every year, when we're going through it, as in all the department heads do, they look to propose enhancements to their programs. And what we're doing when we get towards the end is that, in each fiscal year, so to answer your question, Kristen, that our focus, for the most part, shifts from not just program enhancements, but it's program enhancements in working towards a guideline. So when part of it becomes a math problem, and then you're also prioritizing and see, okay, how much can we afford to do? And so PD is exposed like a lot of the other recommendations or requests that come through. And I think that we always promote for the staff to take advantage of everything they can. Does that happen every year? And from my perspective, not necessarily. It's not a criticism, but it's not like we're spending that PD to zero.
okay.
And I think the other piece too is from year to year, there are some roles that, so if we were bringing in like a new science curriculum that year,
Yeah.
we need to have a science team.
Right.
So Christine will take a look and say, you know what, there's not a new curriculum coming this year, we're not gonna need this team, we can extract that money out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So if someone wants to make the motion,
So moved.
I second it.
Fred, any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a reduction in Full Meadow CCIM. I believe these dollars are associated with a differential for what would be an intern or a fellow, that we did not have enough for the second, so these dollars would come out for FY '20.
What is CCIM?
Oh, God. Curriculum consumable instructional materials. That's a Dr. Creedon
Attaboy.
legacy piece, I think.
And attaboy, Steve, nice job. Thank you for answering the
And you
question.
said we still have one,
There's still one in the budget.
there's still one in the budget.
Is this the one you were trying to find at Merrimack? Or is this different?
Yes.
Same one. So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Next is in reducing one out-of-district tuition and associated transportation, total of $65,000. And Mr. LaCava can speak to this in greater detail, that at this stage of the game, that we feel confident enough that we can reduce that $65,000 in terms of how much risk we want to shoulder. Is that fair?
That's fair.
How confident, Matt?
It's a
That is
confidence
really
level based
impressive.
on the fact that we've established a reserve fund, right? So that's one of the approaches, and we've talked to the town as well, that being more conservative on the projection side, based on the fact that we have a reserve fund if that need arises. So that's why that recommendation would be there, is a reserve fund in there for a reason, right? So if we run into a need for that, then that'll be the time that we try to access.
So, in other words, when you made the budget, did you add potential move-ins or people that may move up or down levels?
Right,
You
right.
factored
So
that in,
in
okay.
October, you look at kids' needs, now you look at kids' needs. A driving factor of this, though, is that kids' needs plus that we have the reserve fund, right? So
Right.
it just is trying to be as conservative, level of risk is what we talk about all the time, right? And so I think there's a moderate comfort level of reducing that, knowing that the town has set up a procedure in place so that if that happens,
Right,
we have somewhere to go.
okay.
And this leaves one in the budget still? Did you plan for two? Or does this take both of them out?
No, there's still, yeah, that's a hard, there's still some projections in there.
Okay,
Well, there has to be.
Right.
so you didn't completely eliminate that line?
that line is not completely eliminated. It's probably the most conservative it's been in the past several years,
Okay.
Okay,
is what I would say. But again, conservative for a reason.
Right.
because it's-
right, we have a
Backup.
safety net.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a reduction in technology supplies and software. This is, again, a leadership team discussion and a leadership team recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is the reduction of the proposed nurse leader, that it is not going to carry the day in the other two towns. So we'll revisit that for FY '21.
Has it been discussed over there, and
Yes.
you're hearing that it's not gonna fly?
It's already, yeah.
Okay.
We can't do it in one. It needs to, if it was gonna be two, we would've still, but one doesn't work. So we'll revisit it next year.
This is one we were hoping for to help ease the burden of the nurses that were overburdened with 3,000 stops.
Right, we still,
You have
on
the
that
nurses.
note though, we still have nurse assistant support. So direct
both
work.
schools.
Well, we have it
You have it in
already in
how?
Howman. We proposed it for Fuller Meadow. That didn't come up.
That's still in there, okay.
Okay.
Right,
good.
so there's still,
Okay.
right, so there's still gonna be support for each of the nurses for seeing kids. This was more of a tri-town subbing for nurses, but the more administrative roles type of thing. So I feel good that, we will revisit that, especially since the other two towns, but we maintained the nurse assistant.
Okay.
So they will get support with the 3,000 kids.
Okay. So moved.
I'll second it.
Excuse me, could I interrupt? If this is going to be revisited, what motion?
Not that one.
No,
That
no.
one won't be.
2021.
2021.
Oh,
Next,
which
yeah,
one?
not for-
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that gets you, as a
Okay,
committee, to
so-
5.7.
We
Sorry,
need to vote,
before we
sorry.
move forward,
So-
I'm sorry, quick question, before we move forward on the tech supplies and software, I know you talked about it amongst yourselves. One year I was in central office in the summer, and everyone was working off of one printer because the rest of them had broken down, and I just wanna make sure we're not, okay. Carry on, sorry.
No.
Okay, so you had made the motion for the nurse leader, and Fred had seconded, so we just need to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No
to interrupt
worries.
that.
That's
I
fine.
thought we had already,
I did too much.
Next would be an overall,
Stop there for 1 sec.
he's gonna take my attaboy away.
Exactly.
No, never.
No, once you get it, I don't think they can take it
Yeah,
away.
you don't.
Yeah, it's
You
like,
can.
yeah, you can?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a
man.
roll.
1-0,
Even from like years ago?
1-0 crap wipes out 10
Does
attaboy.
it really?
Yeah, it's a fact.
I didn't know there was a formula.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't know there was a
Father-in-law
formula.
taught me that right before I got married. Yeah, Mr. Over.
Anywho,
Yes.
so that takes the committee to a 5.77, correct, Steve Greenberg?
correct.
So now, the dialogue is around, the dialogue is around what we started the conversation with. There are other items on this list for discussion. And then also sounds like a regrouping with Steve, myself, Sarah, and Andy. And so, Steve, I'd like to hear your thoughts on proceeding. Amy, I think it'd be good to weigh in as well in terms of thoughts on proceeding, in terms of
Move
voting for
forward.
something,
Yeah.
and then if we had to undo that vote, undo that vote.
Correct. Move forward with tentative vote, with something in the language that we may revisit those two pending discussion with town administration. Because, we gotta hear everything they have to say and all the perspectives, and we may come back and say, hold where we're at. And in other words, the motions that you made, even including ones that we call potentially tentative, run with it, that's it, and we'll look at stabilization for FY '21, if that makes sense. If not, then it could just be off the table for a little bit.
Okay,
Why are the last two on here if we're not gonna discuss them?
So we are
We're gonna discuss
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
and
Tonight?
approve
Yes.
them, but if they come back from meeting with the town and they say, okay, we can use the stabilization fund, then maybe these two are pretty similar to what we're looking at in the stabilization fund, so we may take that and keep these two things and use that money. But if we don't use that money, then we've already voted to take these off the
Right.
table.
That would just be for the salaries, right?
Both
Contractually?
salaries and new requests.
Why would it be for the new
Because
request?
those are the two things that we need
To get you to the
to
5%.
get us
right?
to the 5%.
Right now, it's 577, salary one at 30, gets you to 552, and then, you know, again, just like we got feedback from Matt on the out-of-district tuition.
No, I know, but the salaries might be contractual, but a new classroom, school committee decision.
Correct, correct. So that's what I'm saying, we would discuss them.
So why don't we discuss them, and then we'll go from there? Okay.
Tell us more
Oh.
about the
Yeah, we
salaries.
need
Okay.
data from you, Steve.
Tell them what you right now, Steve.
Well, thank you. Salaries would be a reduction in overall salaries.
And
Period.
whether we need to be-
Period. Now it's to the will of the committee.
And it is the will of the committee.
How about a little more?
That's it.
A reduction how?
We need to go into.
Reduction in overall salaries.
Oh,
It could be an
okay.
executive session discussion.
Okay, and what about the classroom section?
Classroom section, there are two classroom sections this is new to the budget, that were proposed, and that one of the classroom sections would come out.
Which, can we talk about, which,
You absolutely can talk,
Yeah.
that's,
So I think we kick it over to James and Diane. So
Yeah.
in the draft one budget,
James.
James had proposed an additional section for Hal Manning. Diane had proposed an additional section for Fuller Meadow.
yeah,
And so I think it'd be good to hear from both the principals on thought process and rationale for those being entered into the budget conversation. And then for the committee to
just, you don't.
listen to that, decide and deliberate on, do we want to take one out to get to that 5% number or not? Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely, as soon as they.
So the current kindergarten is in 6 sections. They are at 19, 5 of them are at 19, 1 of them is at 18. So I was proposing a 7th section for grade 1 for this group of kids. So the 6th section would move up to grade 1, and then we would add a section to grade 1 as well, making it more 16 in a class. Because right now most of them are at 19, one is at 18. So,
And there's
for
six,
1 second.
yeah, there's 6 now, 6 kindergarten,
yeah.
6.
It's not, your enrollment was in here, and it's not, and actually, we have Cole School.
I'm not sure why it's not in there, so I was gonna
Yeah,
have
something
Joni look at
moved,
that
it was in
tomorrow.
there earlier, so I,
I can
no,
dump
it
it
was
right
in
now.
there earlier, I just,
Weird. It was there earlier and it's not there now?
no, it was definitely there earlier.
Okay, hold on one second.
I noticed that, but I was just gonna have Joan fix it tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I don't have a copy of it.
That's okay, can you just repeat again, so it's adding the section for
The first
first
grade.
grade, kids going into first grade?
Yeah, so
And
right.
what would that mean, yeah, go ahead.
So right now, there are 6 sections. 5 of them are at 19, 1 of them is at 18. So it would be 7 sections of grade 1, so that the numbers would be more in line with the former guideline, which was.
I'm taking Cole out.
Okay, which would be about 16 or 17. Because that doesn't include any move-ins
Right.
over the summer.
I mean, we haven't heard of any move-ins yet, right?
No, I did ask Joan about that.
Yeah.
We've had some potentials, but nobody who is registered yet.
Okay.
Definitely people who have said that they're gonna be moving, but we don't have a purchase and sale or anything like that. So
Okay.
really would not be fair for me to put those students in the numbers.
Yep, okay.
If you refresh your drive, just go up to the dialog bar and hit return and refresh the drive. You'll see in there a PDF that says Middleton enrollment. It's a JPEG. I took out the call. I don't know how those got in there. And so that'll give you what we currently have based on December. So, you know, Diane and James might say, oh, there's 2 kids more, there's 2 kids less, and here's the sections and so on and so forth. But this at least gives you what we have currently right now in seat. And again, it might be plus or minus 2 or 3. Because we pulled this in December, and we're now in March, but that gives you an idea of where the sections are currently and what the enrollment is currently and what the class sizes are currently.
And Diane, were we adding for kindergarten too?
So
What
we
was
were
that?
watching
We're
kindergarten,
watching.
but kindergarten, I don't at this point see any jeopardy of kindergarten. I think that we are, right now, we're at about 82 maybe.
We're okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So kindergarten would go to 5, grade 1 would be at 7, grade 2 would be at 5
Okay,
with the plan.
okay.
And what is the average number of kids per class when we go to 7? If we kept this in the budget and go to 7?
Why,
She's saying 16 to 17.
why can't grade 1 go to 6? It's at 6 now, right, kindergarten?
Because they're at 19 or 18 in a class.
That's what we're talking about, so,
This says 17.
The current kindergarten, Freddie's, are we looking at 6 sections, 106 kids?
Yeah,
17 in a class.
17.67.
Yeah. And so with NESDEC, let me look at the NESDEC enrollment for you. So this is, that's the December enrollment. And I can tell you what the projected enrollment is for grade 1 next year, if you give me 1 second.
But
I
NASDAQ,
think it was 112, Scott.
NASDAQ's been pretty
Sometimes spot on,
inconsistent.
and sometimes not spot on, I would agree.
Sometimes way off, sometimes on exactly.
Yep.
But in my experience here, it's not usually, it's usually overestimating.
Yeah, in fact, the report that we got actually specifically talked about this current kindergarten class, saying that it was an anomaly, because I think we had them at like 60, and it wound up being 106 or whatever.
Yeah, they have it at 113
Yeah.
Yeah.
for next year.
Oh, for next year.
For next year, first grade being 113, that's their projection.
So it's not 106.
it would go up.
Well, right now, today in the school, it's 106, but they're saying with move-ins and whatever happens.
Yep.
Kids coming back out of private schools or
They go to
whatever, whatever
113.
Didn't we
reason.
talk about that before, though? 7 seems high.
Having 7 kids added?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the average is. Is there
7, having
Additional.
7 sections?
No, having 7.
kids move in?
So last summer, I had 12 move-ins, 6 in first grade, 6 in second.
At 2 grades. We were talking 1 grade.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
So she had 6 move in 1 grade last year, NESDEC is projecting 7 this year, so
But it would still be. It'd still
about
be,
19.
yeah.
So you're saying 113 divided by 7?
Or 6, and just
By
to do it.
6.
So
Well,
this,
currently-
these numbers, are these not accurate?
Kids.
Like, have we had
That's
kids move
18,
in
almost
since,
19.
have had some move-ins.
since December? Okay.
That's what I'm saying, these might be.
Okay, because this
plus or
looks like
minus
the
2.
classes
Yeah.
might be 17,
That's
18,
what
not
he's saying.
18, 19.
Yeah, they are
so there's
18,
some
19.
change. Okay.
Versus 16.
So don't go by this. We have to add probably 3 more kids onto this, because
Onto what? The
So-
113 or the 106?
106,
Yeah.
because there's been additional kids move in since this paper was created.
So that brings you to 109.
Well, Diana's saying we have 5 classes of, right now, of 19 and 1 of 18. So I gotta do the math.
Right. And by adding this $60,000 in the budget, leaving the $60,000 in the budget, we'd go down to
109.
roughly 16 kids per class, maybe one was 17. Is that accurate?
Well, you haven't heard James too, because James has.
Right, right,
yeah,
no, well, then we can understand, we can hear his side and we can understand,
Both.
yeah, you guys can duke it out and we'll watch.
So, before James goes, yes, Diane's section that she
6 sections of
has requested, and I am also gonna put in there for you guys, if you refresh your drive
I need
again,
a spreadsheet to show me that, Steve, it's right here.
I need a spreadsheet.
you'll see another JPEG in there. Refresh your drive, Middleton NESDEC. And so that gives you what NESDEC is projecting for next year. So Diane, how many do you currently have for kindergarten? For next year?
I think it's either 81 or 82. I
Yeah,
don't
so they're projecting 82. Now, again, it's only March, so that number might go up a bit. They're projecting 113 for grade 1, 80 for grade 2, 88 for grade 3, 80 for grade 4, 89 for grade 5, and 102 for grade 6. Those are the NESDEC projections.
Okay.
So even at 113, even at, it's 19 a class.
Right.
Yeah, 19 in class and 1 with 18.
Yep.
But, and our guideline is?
So the guideline
In our
policy-wise.
handbook?
Yeah, it's more handbook. It's gonna be, it will be handbook-based moving forward, Mark. That was one of the things the policy subcommittee talked about, and what Mike Gilbert had talked about. It should be more handbook-driven than policy-driven. If you give me a second while James talks, I will read to you the old policy, which is really no longer in effect because it's gonna be something that will be more in the handbook as opposed to in a policy book. But as James shares his, give me a minute and I'll find the old policy language for you.
Thank you. All right, James, let me draw a line. Go.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, so currently in grades 3 through 6, there are 20 classroom sections, 20 classroom teachers. So the proposal was to increase that from 20 to 21 classrooms. The change would be occurring, if you look at the current third grade, it would be, they are in 4 sections, they had been in 4 sections. It would be, as they move on to 4th grade, it would be having them go into 5 sections. Right now, there are 3 19s and a 20 in the 4 sections. And that's actually down one, when they started the year, there were 2 19s and 2 20s. There was a lot of feedback from parents when they were doing their transition from Fuller Meadow to Hal Manning about that class size. It was something that we had decided we'd monitor throughout the course of the summer, and the numbers did creep up a little bit over the summer from where they left 2nd grade to when they arrived in 3rd grade. There has been continued feedback from school council and other services just about monitoring that section, that group of kids, and whether or not they should be in 4 sections or 5 sections. So right now, they're 3 19s and a 20. NESDEC's predicting them to go up a little bit, looks like to be at 80 by the time they get into 4th grade. So in 4 sections, that would be 20 kids per class if it did go to 80, or in 5 sections, it would be 16 kids to class. If it's 20 kids per class, that would be the biggest class sections at Hal Manning. If it's 16 kids per class, that would be the smallest sections at Hal Manning.
Okay.
And that's really the background to the entire proposal.
Is it 16?
Well, why do you think this is?
16 times.
Do you have an issue with it being the biggest class, or?
Nope, it was something that there was a lot of feedback on, about that it is approaching 20, that some of the sections are at 20. What would happen if they started to go over at 20? When we had conversations as a group last summer, let's really monitor that grade level, which is exactly what we did, decide whether or not we'd stay at 4, if we'd consider going to 5. We decided to stay at 4. The numbers stayed at 20 or just below 20. They have more or less been stable there throughout the course of the year. But if we were gonna go into budget season, since it is the highest class average in Hal Manning, I thought it was worthy of discussion and a proposal to see, moving forward, it could easily get up to 20 kids per class this summer, it could go over 20 kids per class this summer, or it could stay right where it is. If we were gonna make a change to go to 5 sections, I think it's more advantageous to do so now, whereas we approach then that, April, May, June job market for teachers to really make sure we go out and find the right one versus monitoring something over the summer where then, like in July and August, we're trying to make a decision and trying to find the right candidate. So I wanted us to be able to have this discussion early on. We may decide that we're comfortable where the numbers are, and even if they go up to what NESDEC says is 80, we have 4 sections of 20.
So in theory, if we left this money in, only one of you gets that extra section.
Right now, there are 2
That's- yeah.
sections in.
We're proposing taking one out.
Yeah,
Oh.
Correct.
Okay.
the one section would, yeah.
So we're determining which one of you wouldn't get that section. So is there?
Am I bad to say I would take them both out? Just looking at the numbers?
Well,
That's-
let's hear, that's an option, for
Wouldn't
sure.
be bad.
No, that's your opinion, Frank. It's not bad, it's your opinion.
Oh,
Well, class section size has a direct result, end result is not as good with 20 kids versus 16. The kids, the quality of the education they're gonna get. My question is there, are there studies that show having less kids in a classroom in 1st grade is better than having less kids in a classroom in 4th grade, or vice versa? Are there studies that show either one's better for the kids, or less of an effect?
Sorry.
Very good question on the
I
table.
didn't hear the question.
Good one.
It's
I didn't-
specifically about research around class size.
Yeah.
And is there research specifically that states that
The negative
lower
effects.
class size in 1st grade versus 4th grade?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, so
You know,
class size.
I'm not trying to pit you guys against each
No,
other.
great.
I'm wondering if that's a legitimate concern. And to Fred's point, or, is it better to leave them both in and find that 60,000 somewhere else or in the stabilization fund?
And I think there's other factors that also, like, it also has to do with the makeup of the general class, right?
Yeah, the
And
amount,
energy,
the
because I
amount of,
remember when our kids were in, I think it was fourth grade, there was a recommendation to add a section to keep the numbers on the lower side because
a lot of
there was a
incidents,
lot of
behavioral.
they were feeding off of each other in such a way that it was creating a really, you know, the environment was less learned, right? So Fred, I think that's another thing to keep in mind is the higher the volume, anecdotally, the better chance that it's gonna be a noisier type of a setting for kids to be learning in.
Scott, what is our policy or handbook I'm sorry,
The old policy language, Mark, it's no longer in policy, and it will move to handbook, but the old policy language in Middleton was grade K, 1 and 2, the desired number of pupils maximum was 18. Grade 3 and 4, the desired number of pupils maximum was 20. In grades 5 and 6, the desired numbers of pupil maximum was 22. And again, with the caveat of what Amy just talked about as well, in terms of, you know, interactions of kids and learning profiles and all of those things. But those are the general guidelines that were set
Yeah, when were they set?
a long
I
time
don't
ago.
remember us ever having 22.
Adopted in '05, so it's
Yeah.
14
I
years
wonder what the
ago.
discussion was then.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
What, do they just
Yeah, what
pull
were the
this
driving-
out, or is it like based on study, or?
And that policy is, you know,
Yeah.
as Krista knows, it's out, right? It's
Right.
not in the policy book. This will be something, that handbook group that's meeting, we're trying to do one Tri-Town handbook, and, you know, that's a whole story for
Let's pull
Tri-Town
the
union
minutes
meeting.
from '05
That'll
and
go in
find
there.
out what the discussion.
Can't wait to read
Yeah.
this. I think, you know, just a point, is that, you know, our ability to keep the numbers down in classrooms is an advantage that we have. And it's an advantage that we've maintained for years. I don't know, you know, when this went into effect, if it was in '05, but we've been able to do it for years. And I think it's a model that other towns are trying to, in our, you know, in the Tri-Town Union, are trying to, that they're trying to get to. I think 20 sounds like a lot, and we haven't had 20, I don't think, since I've been here. So I'm still trying to process the numbers. It seems like, I guess, who has more of a likelihood of getting to that number? And I know we can't predict these things, because 5 families could move in and they, you know, all have third graders, or they all have first graders, so we don't know. It stinks that we even had to cut one, to your point.
In my opinion, I don't think we should take this 60,000 out of the budget. I think we should leave it in.
Yeah.
I think both, first and second grade, going from 19 down to 16, 17 is a lot, but they're younger, and I think even the policy back in '05 said the younger the kid, the less the students. So I'm okay leaving this in, and both principals get the section they need. In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Mark.
What are you laughing about?
Well,
It's 60 grand, it's 0.05% of the budget.
the sixth graders, that's fine. I really don't have a problem about the money. I kind of have a problem about, you know, the class size. It'll be sixth graders, you could go to 5 students. DC says it's gonna be 102, whether that's right or not. So the sixth graders, you'd have 20 a class, right?
Are you talking about next year's 6th grade?
Yeah,
So next year, so that's the current 5th grade. There are 102 students right now.
right.
They're in 6 sections,
DC for next year says 102,
which is the same number they're at now.
yeah.
And when they went to 6th grade, they would still be in 6 sections.
But what I'm getting at is take that teacher from the sixth grade,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the older kids would do better in a class, as we're saying. If not, you're gonna have 16 kids, 16 sixth graders in a class. And you're gonna lose it, you know, you're gonna have 20 in a lower class. But put 20 in the sixth grade, put 20 sixth graders together. And it's just gonna be for 1 year, that's the highest year. And maybe
Are you saying take
Next
the,
year, when we're a little more, fiscally solid,
you're saying you want to bring sixth grade down from 6 sections to 5 sections? Next year's sixth grade?
next year, correct. That'd be 20 a class,
20 and 21,
right.
yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yep.
I'm saying rather than have 20 kids
Mhm.
in the 3rd grade or in the 4th grade.
I think
would
the
say that they-
challenge is,
well,
we
one
don't
thing I would
know
add is
these
that
kids, Fred.
that particular cohort of kids has never known 5 sections as far as I've known. They've always known 6 sections, which has been a very advantageous thing.
Right, and I
Would
think
change
it's
the mix
something
of
that's
kids in the
hard.
class.
Well, the classes change anyway. It's
Yeah.
not the same kids in every class each year.
I know, but I think it's hard to
We-
judge on this side of the table when we don't know the makeup of the classroom and the interactions, and then the additional things that happen as a result of the kids being in a space together. So I do agree with Mark that, that we appreciate you guys really trying to help us get to 5 as much as possible. But it's hard to,
And we've gone round
choose.
and end about it, like, what would this grade look like? What would this grade look like? And, I mean, I'm not even the principal of that school, and I would not recommend that grade going to 5 sections.
Well,
That's next year's sixth grade.
Yes.
next year, I would say keep both or take both out.
right, and it sounds like we're gonna need to have another meeting, so why don't we, hold off on this until we get more information, and if we need to make a cut it sounds like we're adding a meeting, right? So you're gonna have information for us about the stabilization fund
Together with Andy pretty
and
quick.
see if there's anything we can do. This is 60,000, so we're not, I mean, we're very close to guideline. It
Are you
would
voting
be
on the
first time in a
30,000?
really long time that we're not under it.
Right, we've been under in the past. We
We've
haven't
been-
haven't done salaries yet. We did.
Right,
Yeah.
and we have to talk about the salary.
Yeah, you haven't voted that.
So the salary recommendation that is on here obviously wouldn't be impacting the classrooms, right? It's not related to that.
Not related to sections.
No.
Okay.
Well, but the overall dollars are if there's enough there, there's not enough there, right, is what you're saying?
It wouldn't be related to sections. Yeah.
All right.
So if someone wants to make a motion regarding the salaries,
You're,
go back to that one again?
sure, sorry. Hang on, let me reopen that page.
Yeah. You see, I got it right here.
Thank you, Steve. So, we can't move on this because we're going into executive session on this, right?
Well, we could,
You can move on it.
we could move on it either to vote against it, vote for it.
It's a recommendation from the team.
Oh,
But we don't know what it is though.
Yeah.
Right?
But we have to trust that.
The recommendation from the team. If we don't want to vote on it, we can certainly pull together more information for the committee. Just not prepared to present that information right now.
I'll move to remove the salaries
Okay,
from the budget.
someone want to second that?
second.
Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion?
Mm-mm.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna remove the salaries, and then the final thing would be the classrooms.
Yep.
One classroom
So
second.
you're at a 5.52 right now?
So our choices would be to make a motion to remove them,
Remove one,
remove one,
not both.
thank you, remove one, make a motion to, or not a motion, but just, we'll postpone this.
Oh.
Or a motion to
So
not.
we're gonna remove one, but we don't know which one.
That would, yeah, I
Right.
think what would happen there, Freddie, is the committee would rely on the leadership team to figure that out. So if one remained, the committee would, look to the leadership team for how to figure that out.
Yes.
Yes, Andy?
If I could interrupt. Would seem to me, since there's gonna be some more conversation, And obviously, adding a section or not adding a section has a pretty big impact on student education. So it wouldn't break my heart if you just held it for now and let us work through it and see what we can come up with. Since you're gonna meet again, sounds like time to address it then.
That's a great recommendation, thank you.
It will work for us.
So we wouldn't need to vote on it then?
Nope.
Move to table it?
Yeah, just don't even need to take any
Yeah.
action on it.
No action.
Yeah.
So is that okay with
That's
everybody?
okay with me, yes.
Yeah?
Okay, all right, good, so we got it down to 5.52.
5-2.
Okay, thank you all, that was not easy.
Thank you all.
5.52. I'll send it off to you.
Yeah, Steve will send an updated sheet.
And then do you want to send a doodle poll around for a date, or did you want to try to set a date before the meeting and for the next meeting?
Yeah, maybe we can do that at the very end.
Okay,
If that's okay.
yep,
See
that's
if we
fine.
can't hash that out.
Okay,
Then capital meeting. We had our Saturday meeting. We presented overall capital. Steve, you want to jump in on that as
Thought it
well?
was done.
Absolutely. Did you want to go over the Saturday, or just you want me to just?
No,
jump-
Saturday was, I can tell you that the Saturday meeting, we presented, here were all the FY '20 requests, just so everybody had the big picture around the table, Board of Selectmen and FinCom. Andy and Steve Clifford and Steve Greenberg have met along the way, and that capital request has been working to reduce that. So, Steve, you want to jump in, or Andy
Sure.
wants to jump in as well?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I have Andy's comments,
Great.
or the town's perspective, and committee can give us feedback from there, but just like the budget, we kind of want to make some votes on this so everyone can move forward. Draft warrant is in process, so we want to make sure that we're on time as far as what the town needs. When we started our budget process, I'm just going to go over what was requested. And for end-user technology, which is the Appendix N, Fuller Meadow was looking at $34,198, Howe Manning $129,249. Technology infrastructure, both schools, $15,000 apiece, and that is for wireless access points and power over Ethernet 48-port switches. Building interior, Fuller Meadow was looking at $22,500 for modular classroom reconfiguration, depending on what we do with classroom sections and office space. And Howe Manning was looking at $5,000 for a, help me, water bottle filling station, which would, I believe, go right outside of the cafeteria
Yes.
in place of the water fountain that is there now.
great.
Parking lot feasibility study, that was to look at the whole situation, parking lot, playground, means of egress for Fuller Meadows School. And then Howe Manning Security was to replace the NVR, which is the recording device for the surveillance system, and putting in an updated one that is also compatible with the camera system that we have. So that was $49,431. So we met with the town and went over the capital requests.
How much is the parking lot feasibility study?
All right, now, I put in $120,000, because the parking lot feasibility study, from my perspective, and my perspective alone, all right? So when I did this, because we had to put a placeholder in to start the discussion. We have to look at egress, we have to look at ADA compliance, we gotta look at parking lot configuration, how many more spaces can we get, and just the whole reconfiguration on the whole campus. So it's just making sure that we turn over any stones, so that when we go back to the town, it also took us from feasibility study all the way to bidding, so that when we were prepping in May of 2020 for FY '21, that we had a hard quote number to bring to town meeting. So it was to do all of that work. So that's what's in there. We've spoken with the engineer and the architect that Mr. Sheehan has recommended, as well as another engineering firm. I don't believe we've received any proposed numbers back from them yet as far as what they estimate the cost to be. So we're waiting for that information, but we've had 2 or 3 site visits with regard to that request. So that's what that's for. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. So the value of everything that we're asking for at this point in this first draft is $390,378. And so we met with the town and went over the capital plan and had a productive meeting. And the feedback that we got was with the $49,431, which was the Howe Manning NVR. We also are looking at the Fuller Meadow project that we're gonna have a chunk of money left over that could cover that cost. But the thing is, that warrant article is only for Fuller Meadow, so we have to stay within the spirit of the warrant article. We can't use that money to take care of Howe Manning. So it's recommended that we turn those funds back in once the project is completed, and then we revisit that for 21, not for 20. All right, and then we'd work with the town on that. Am I accurate? Okay. So then the next piece of this, as far as the town's feedback, is with regard to the technology request for Howe Manning. And the perspective there was to see if we could phase some of that work over 4 years. So when you look at Howe Manning's Appendix N, in terms of its detail, there is a schedule for replacing interactive boards, and it's recommended or requested that we reduce that ask by 45,000. I just want to I have it right here, I just want to make sure I'm interpreting.
Was 90 and
Right, so it's like cutting it in half and phasing it over time, so there's that piece.
So what was the phase originally, 2 years?
Hold on.
Yep.
I gotta go, let me go to that real quick. Interactive board replacement, and it had 20 boards at 4,500 for 90,000. Are there 40 boards in how many, James, is that?
That might be relatively accurate. It also depends on what board we decided on, because they vary in cost. The most expensive one we're looking at is around 4,500, so that's why that proposal
Yeah.
of the 4,500 number was being used, and we are piloting those boards right now in several classrooms and special education classrooms. So the thought was that, I don't think we precisely said it was a 2-year phase, it could be a 2 to 3 year phase, but we thought 90,000 would get us at least halfway there in 1 year, and then we could kind of break up the remainder of the way over another year or two.
And so we're just pushing that out, doing 45,000
Right, right.
in the next 2 years.
That's what is being, that's what the town's communicating as a recommendation. It's up to the committee to vote. If that's what you want to move forward with as far as these actions, if you want to make those adjustments so that then they would adjust the warrant articles that are going to go forward for capital. The next one was with regard to the modular space at Fuller Meadow, that we would hold off on that right now, as we don't know what's going to happen with classroom sections and space needs. Dr. Carrero may have some more insight or perspective on that, so I'll stop there if there's anything you want to add to that. And what that included, that, so that we're clear, is that was recarpeting, hold on, I got my notes, gotta go back to my notes real quick so I get it all.
Is that the PD center, the modular space?
Next to it.
No, there's a room next to it.
So it would be putting in phone system in the modular space, recarpeting it, putting furniture in there, storage container, and then a water bottle filling station. That's what the 22.5 consists of.
And that space was being envisioned for, like, an extra, was that for a classroom, or was that?
I thought it was.
For office space,
Right.
because we have central office in our,
Yeah.
so we're kind of outgrowing that.
Okay.
So we will need to recover some of those offices back for either classroom spaces or, so I need a place to put those people.
Okay.
The other option in that situation would be, we see if we have room in the other buildings too.
Parking lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, and, across the tri-town, we could see if we had other spaces as well for our staff who are currently here, if need be.
For the central office staff.
Yeah,
that-
yeah.
that
I mean, we're
travels
all
around.
kind of mobile anyway.
Right.
But if need be, if we needed to move those folks, if that wasn't something that made the capital plan and we're running out of space, we could look around the tri-town too.
Okay.
And then the last one was with regard to the Fuller Meadow parking lot, as estimates come in, see if we can trim the budget for that project, see if we can break it out and split it off in terms of evaluating the playground area versus the parking lot as far as circulation.
So separating that into 2 years?
And I don't think it was separating in 2 years, it was just the scope of work. Is that accurate? What it says, I can read it verbatim, just to make sure I've been.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, Fuller Meadow parking lot, as estimates come in, please trim the budget on this project. Is it possible to break up and split the playground off from the parking lot circulation?
What's the playground?
Well, I think that we would be looking at, so where the playground at Fuller Meadow is right now, that may be part of
Yep.
the evaluation and the study process, because if we have to take it and then relocate the playground as part of this reconfiguration, I mean, may have to be looked at. And we just put the playground in.
So I think I'm just unclear of what the recommendation is then, to leave the playground alone, or,
Well, to leave it, really to leave it alone until you know the bigger plan of what's gonna happen on the entire site with parking and circulation.
But wouldn't you have to do that anyway? Like, I guess, what are you scrapping? Like, what are you,
Well,
What are
really
you
just
pushing off?
pushing it out so that you don't do something with the playground, and then a year from now or 2 years from now, you come forward with a change in parking and circulation, and the new playground's in the way.
gotcha.
a new I guess I'm
So
still
focus on
really
the
confused.
parking lot
Yeah.
first.
But isn't the playground, what, I thought I heard you say is the playground could be in the way.
It's possible. It's possible.
Depending on what the study
Yeah,
finds.
just with the study
Right, so
findings.
we're still gonna do the
recommendations.
study.
Yes.
Incorporating the area that the playground's in.
The original design study we're looking at egress in and around.
Yeah.
And also, are all the parking problems that we have with voting day in particular. Right, those are the two voting days are big challenging days. So I think the phase one of this would be the design and get a number that we could kind of go to a town meeting with. But as was brought up at our Saturday meeting with Board of Selectmen and FinCom, other options might be, do we talk to the person who owns the lot in front of Fuller Meadow and see if there's a conversation that can be engaged in there? So there's still lots of, I think, conversations that have to take place, but my understanding is right now that we're sort of pulling that off, correct?
The whole study piece of it?
Yes.
The whole study in postponing the 120?
That's what I'm asking. Was that the dialogue? No.
It's not, no. We were explaining, we were talking about what it entailed.
Okay.
And so I think we're all on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish. Because there is only one means of egress.
Correct.
And the parking there is challenging. And so we're trying to solve those things. And in doing so, we've got to look at the entire campus.
Right.
The entire lot, and see what we can do, and then what options are there? Can we go through Teresa's? Can you go through Brigadoon? Currier's where with their lot, it has its own challenges in itself. So that's really the end game of the study. And again, it is the feasibility study first, to take us from feasibility study, in my mind, and go all the way through bidding, so that when we're prepping for the 2021 budget, that we have a hard quote. And there's no ambiguity about cost, and we have a hard number for a proposal. And so we're just, working with the town and its enablement, what it can do, and we're just trying to be sensitive to all of that as well.
So, all that you just said we're not taking, that would not be
That's up to
taken
the-
out.
that's up
No,
to
but
the
I
committee.
guess I'm still confused as to what the playground has to do with it, when you
Well,
said separate
when I
out the
say to
playground.
you, from my perspective, when I say to you, we've got to look at the entire lot, that includes where playground structures exist right now. And so if a plan evolves that includes relocating
Yeah,
that equipment, that's what we're saying.
so we can evaluate that after.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. But, am I off track, Andrew, from your?
No, I think you're right on, Steve.
Well, it's only included because the design might necessitate it being included. You know what I
Right.
mean? The design, they might be able to say, oh, everything's fine, we're not even gonna go near that.
Yeah.
But I think Steve's just trying to be cautionary and say, if in the design plan, they say like, hey, in order to pull this off, in order to have 2 egress, in order to have more parking, you may have to consider this. We won't know that until we get to the design phase.
What about the land on that side, closer towards Maggie's farm?
No, no,
Maggie's
no.
in that one.
Okay, yeah, I was looking for that too. We're not gonna
That's
figure
Brigadoon.
that out tonight.
He's right, he's
I
right.
got
Maggie's in that
I got
one.
100,
Do we have
100 that says I'm right.
Yeah, you're right. Look, I see the 100.
Let's see where he wants to go. Here we
So
go.
Steve, are we looking to vote on this capital plan?
Yes, ma'am. I would ask for, a vote from the school committee so that we can communicate back to the town, because they're working up against a timeline as far as getting their warrant articles finalized, and anything that the committee can vote on and move forward will be helpful for the town.
And a vote from the committee just indicates to the town that this is what the school committee is prioritizing. A vote from the committee does not indicate like, this is now going to be a warrant article.
It doesn't, yeah, it still has to go through its process with Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, and they will have the final say as what carries the day with warrants and what the funding sources will be.
So then what would our motion be? Because that was like some some very
I can do each one.
interesting
Yeah,
recommendations.
I can do each one for you.
Just give the summary, Steve, again, the scaled-down list based upon the conversation you had with the town.
Yeah, well, so
Without
what I'll.
detail, just give us, like, what's the headline of each one of those?
Right, so what I would say is I would follow literally what Andrew communicated, reduce this warrant article or pull this article.
Okay.
And then I can tell you what that total number would be, but I gotta calculate it, all right? So the first one would be, for the committee to make a motion to, pull the request for the Howe Manning NVR.
NVR was the
It's a recording device for security system.
NVR?
N as in Nancy,
So we had put in a
Nancy,
request
David,
to
Ronald.
utilize
and
warrant money from Fuller Meadow, but as Andy has
You
pointed
can't
out, we need
cross
to
over.
send that back and
and
then,
it would be looked at for 2020.
Okay.
correct.
Right,
And
okay,
that's worth 49,431.
okay.
So that's, would be,
So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Is
This
this,
is-
is it somewhere on a,
No.
the,
Hold on one second, I can put it in there.
Can't,
you want the capital memo, Scott?
I'll just put the list in.
When we get to the 125 for the feasibility study, I have some discussion on that.
Okay.
So the motion would be to pull the Howe Manning NVR warrant article in the amount of 49,431. Or warrant article request.
So moved.
So Kristen made the motion, Mark second.
Second.
Was there any discussion?
are you putting that in,
No, we're taking it out.
Scott?
You're taking it out.
No.
No,
he's
Freddie's
putting
asking
it
me
in.
of putting something in the drive.
Okay, sorry.
Capital list.
Yeah, we don't rush
Yeah,
you,
Freddie.
Freddie, it's all about you right now. Take your time.
Damn, can I see that 100 again? I'll sell you these crackers for 100.
Hey, by the way, Andy, there's some crackers here. if you want
I know.
some crackers. Scott, recommend he doesn't want.
I'm getting your health summary.
Oh, don't worry about that, not free.
This one.
You can't put it back in the bag.
Not free.
Give me a minute.
I
I'll
can't.
put it in.
I found these at Farmer Brown's on the ground.
Steve Greenberg,
Yes.
do you have it to put in?
Do I have what?
Do you have the capital to put in so people can look at it?
I do, hold on one second.
If you could upload it to the
Talking in the
drive.
back of the class again.
He is,
Yeah,
and he's,
I
you
am
know, he's gonna
terrible.
get detention
We
in a
may have to
minute.
separate you
Yeah.
two.
Hey, yeah, you're right. While he's doing that, if you wanna go to Google Maps and go to the satellite image of this property,
Okay.
please. You don't have to, look at her, I just got the evil eye. I can get that at
I
home.
think, I'm just, what are you, what? What are we trying to solve here?
While he's doing that,
Yeah.
moving on to this.
So you
we
can
got-
go to vote.
We got $120,000.
Someone motion, someone second.
We're looking to go to $120,000 to do a feasibility study on parking and means of egress. In my opinion, there's not a whole lot of space here to change what we have currently unless we were able to buy couriers or the people on that side. And we don't need to spend $120,000 to find out if we can buy those. If we can't buy either of those, or a sliver of part of those to make a second means of egress or something, it's money we shouldn't spend, or maybe don't need to.
It's 2 classrooms.
It's 2 classrooms, or half of it is what we're looking for that side, so. Although it's a warrant article, it's not coming out of our budget, so that's sort of separate. But ultimately, we're stewards of the community money, and I feel like, unless you know something about this feasibility study that I don't know.
I don't know anything, it just, no, I don't know anything yet.
But if you're looking at that.
And Mark, what you're saying is in line with what the town is recommending, right?
No, I think you're
No, he's
recommending
saying
doing the
that.
feasibility study. And I'm not an engineer, smart guy, but not an engineer. But looking at this map, the width of going out of this driveway is all we own, unless we own other property or buy the house behind us and come out of Edgewood Road, which no one in Brigadoon is gonna enjoy or appreciate, right?
I understand. Again, like you said, I see things in my head, but as far as,
Cars coming
I
in
get it.
and out of here.
no, I get it, but I think that
You're not
that's.
going any wider here, you're not going any wider here, because we don't own that, we don't own that. unless you're going in the opposite direction. And
So what are you recommending?
I'm saying, we approach both of these property owners first to see if there's the potential to buy some piece of that property to be able to increase our means of egress before we spend the money on the feasibility study.
And what was the recommendation that you guys had when you spoke a couple Wednesdays ago?
Where we're at, as far as the feedback from the town, was Fuller Meadow parking lot, as estimates come in, please trim the budget on this project. Is it possible to break up and split the playground off from the parking lot / circulation?
And what was the price associated with that?
Well, right now I have 120.
And what was that built upon? Just that past history?
Steve
of-
Greenberg looking at this and thinking what's gonna be involved, because there are several components about this. So we're talking about egress, we're talking about ADA, we're talking about parking configuration, curb cuts, concrete, asphalt, all of those things, and it's to take the process from feasibility study all the way through bidding. So it's to do design, it's to solicit quotes, to do the whole bid package, to put detailed plans together, engineering, all of that. So soup to nuts, so that, again, when we go to 2021, if we are able to put something together, that we have a hard number for May town meeting 2020.
And that 120 is an item that could come in at 80,
Could,
and the 40 goes back to the town.
it could, absolutely, or they repurpose it for the project itself if it
Correct.
carries the day.
Correct.
But to Mark's point, have we asked if any of the adjacent landowners would be
We've asked,
willing to partner?
in the past, we have asked the owner of the front lot to use it for parking
Right.
during voting, and that was not an idea that we were able to pursue.
Okay,
And that's the only data point I'd be able to give the committee, that we've asked to use it on a one-day basis. We've never asked to purchase it, we've never engaged in that conversation, but just to use it for one day, and that request didn't go anywhere.
I think what's hard about these is we don't, I think, are they in the drive? 'Cause
Yep.
Yes, it is
there's
now.
some,
Middleton Capital Plan Overview.
Yeah.
I don't wanna rush. And it's feeling a little rushed because we're just seeing this for the first time, Steve?
Capital would have been in the original budget, correct?
Right.
These changes,
Okay.
these recommendations is the
Yep.
first time we're seeing them.
The reductions that
Yes.
we've engaged in with the town,
Right.
sure.
So what you have is a capital plan overview, all right? What I'm communicating, so I'll have to put this in here, there as well.
So if you want, Amy, if you'd
Well, yeah,
rather,
'cause I just think
we
this
table this
visual
until, we are gonna have to have a second meeting,
Mm-hmm.
obviously in Middleton. If you're feeling that this is,
Yeah, I think so.
rushed, we can certainly have that conversation then. I know we have a timeline that we're trying to work with on the town.
Yeah, we have a couple of weeks to work with. but
Okay.
Right, the document that
there's-
you gave us for.
There's a little
um,
cushion there too, there's a little,
Yeah. I mean, like the Howe Manning security, that, that's one that absolutely the committee can, I think if we haven't already, did we take action on it? If we haven't,
I
it's
think so.
certainly one that we, the guidance from the town, that money is not, we're not able to flip that money into Howe Manning. It's money left over from the warrant at Fuller Meadow. It's not something that we can go to the town and say, hey, on town meeting floor, can you turn this into a warrant article for Howe Manning? That's not a process that we can engage in according to the rules and regulations from, I think, DOR. And so what Andy is recommending as town manager is that we return those funds to the town, they get earmarked in 2021, FY '21, we come back and we say we'd like to access those funds. So if that's something the committee wanted to move on tonight, we could certainly do that. If the committee wants to wait on all this capital discussion, we can certainly wait until a second meeting in March.
I'm fine moving on the 49.
Okay, so you're-
Which we did, didn't we?
Well, you made the
We did.
motion.
We did.
I thought we voted.
No,
Yeah, we-
because then Fred said he wanted to see it, so we postponed.
No,
120 we postponed.
With the 120 we postponed? Okay.
The 49, with 49 we voted on.
49, the motion was made.
Was it voted?
Right, I don't think it
And was
was,
voted on?
no, it wasn't voted.
No.
Okay, fine, that's okay. So Kristen had made the motion, Mark had seconded, and then Fred asked for a visual. So then we moved into this. So the motion is still on the table to remove the Hal Manning security system. So all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Okay. Are there any other easy ones, or are the rest
It's
more
up to you what easy,
visual?
well, the other two would be reducing the Howe Manning technology, end-user technology request by 45,000, and pulling the Fuller Meadow space configuration for 22.5. And actually, with the Howe Manning 5,000 for the water bubbler, we take care of that within the operating budget.
And so those first two ones that you just said, Steve, that was in dialogue with the town?
Correct.
And
It's feedback from the town after we had our meeting.
Yeah, and so could you say those two again?
So the next one would be reducing the Howe Manning end-user technology warrant article request by 45,000, and pulling the 22,500 for the Fuller Meadow space reconfiguration, and also then pulling the 5,000 for Howe Manning water bubbler, because we'll take care of that in the operating budget.
What type of water bubble is it?
When you're, if, it's.
Seems a little pricey.
It's in the cafeteria.
In the cafeteria is a water bubbler that also you can fill water bottles, and it keeps track of how many bottles, plastic
filtered
bottles.
water.
I'm sorry?
It's filtered water, so people can bring their water bottles and
Yeah.
just go in, and it's already refrigerated, so it's cold. Any college that you go to now has those, libraries have them.
If $5,000?
$5,000
Well,
for
it's
its
the-
unit and installation.
Yeah, installation.
Promotes healthy habits with kids, rather than going and getting a sip of water
Yeah,
here or
yeah.
there. You know, they're learning the habit of actually carrying a bottle and keeping their hydration at appropriate levels for their growth and activity and everything.
It's labeled.
So,
Contract.
are we comfortable making a motion for removing the water system, because that's gonna be covered, you said anyway?
Operating
Yes.
budget.
That's
Yeah,
an easy,
yeah,
okay, so
yeah.
Mark, will you make that motion?
Sure. move.
Only on the water?
I will second it.
Oh, wait a minute.
Wait, we're doing them all separately?
We have to,
Oh, okay,
right? We have to do them all
Do
separately.
them all separately, yeah.
okay. So moved.
I'm sorry. Who
S-
made the
Remove the
motion?
water bottle from the proposal, because we're gonna do it in the operating budget.
We haven't seconded yet, so I'll second
Moved
it.
by Mark
Fred
Morrison.
seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm getting punchy.
Yeah, Fred seconded it. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Steve, after the water bubbler.
After the water bubbler would be to reduce the Howe Manning technology infrastructure by 45,000.
Okay, so can we get that one on paper to see that?
It's
It's
on,
page
it's,
2
that
of that
request is on there.
I just think we need more
What is
discussion
more?
about it.
Oh, yeah. So what do you wanna do? You wanna bring it to the next meeting?
Or either that, or open it up to understanding it more.
So it's
So what it
page
would
2
be
of
is-
that document, yeah, if you
Right.
scroll down.
So what that would be is the ask for Howe Manning is $90,000 to replace 20 boards. We would reduce that to 10.
And I think that's our question is, you know, what does that mean? What's the implications? You know, we, obviously,
A longer-
technology changes
Sure.
very quickly, and so how does that affect us?
Very, very good point.
So I'm not comfortable making a decision without having that discussion.
Then that's,
And
then
I
you should
say
have
we-
it for the next meeting,
Yes.
because
I would say
what that is all gonna be is subjective,
Yep.
all right? And
Right, because we remember the reason that you pitched it to us,
it's what,
why we need all these boards,
okay? Well,
right? It was
they
like
are-
Steve and Jane's
yeah.
work, so now
Right.
to go
Well,
from 90
they're
to 10.
aging out, so there's a couple things to keep in mind as far as the big picture and longer term. That the equipment is starting to age out, and in the next couple of years, we're gonna be coming to you with a heavy request concerning the infrastructure. That it's gonna be an expensive feasibility study, because it's gonna be very in-depth, especially with Howe Manning and incorporating Fuller Meadow. And it's gonna be, the next year, we'll be replacing all of that infrastructure equipment, or phasing it depending on what the capacity is of the town, and it's gonna be expensive. I mean, that's gonna be $1 million,
Which is why we were comfortable with the,
understand?
okay.
And we,
Understand.
and know that we absolutely agree that comment of, yeah, we came and made the presentation because we thought it's important. We still think it's important,
Yeah.
right? What we're saying is, we're working with feedback from the town, who's saying, capital ask was 10 gallons, can you get it down to like 7?
Yep.
And so I think this is where, we're not saying like, this is no longer important, we're saying it's important, do we take a phased approach to it?
Right.
You know, where it's over maybe a couple of years to try to reduce the capital ask from 10 pounds down to 7 pounds. So, you know, just please know, like, absolutely, the presentations and all those things, we're still in 100% agreement that's the direction we want to go. It's just trying to figure out from how to make it all work.
Yeah.
And this has all been discussed at the leadership team level and.
The capital requests were discussed
I
with-
guess just, yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
No, just, it's,
Steve and Andy had a meeting,
right,
And that's
the
where we
town
were.
is giving us feedback.
feedback on our capital plan.
So it's really now, I mean, everyone has made their pitch as far as the importance of all these things. And it's just a time with what Scott said, it's not to minimize the importance of it, that the capital plan also butts up against these external factors, capacity of the town, political climate, funding mechanisms, and priorities, other priorities. That's why the capital plan has to be fluid, because we're not the only game in town. So we definitely can bring it back for the next meeting, and then you have all of the department heads here to answer any of your questions as far as impact of phasing or making those adjustments, and then you can go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right? And then the next one, if you want to discuss it, is Fuller Meadow, reconfiguring that space.
Right, and if we're putting the classroom component on hold, my concern is if we're gonna need a classroom, we might look at that space differently, but if we don't need the classroom, we would look at that space differently. So they feel like they go hand in hand to me. I don't know what you guys think.
And I
Right,
don't know
we're
if
talking
you
the
have
same-
input on that, because, Dr. Correa may have something that helps you make a decision.
No, I think that that's specifically right. If I, the reason why I need that is because I need to open up other spaces within the building.
they're
So,
kinda-
hand in hand.
Yeah. Can we hold
Excuse
off
me.
on that one?
It's,
too,
it's
please?
what you want.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Will of the committee, Amy.
okay.
It's you.
I think that's it, right? That's
Yeah.
all?
And
I
we're
don't know
gonna,
if you have any other questions or thought on the Fuller Meadow parking lot, you wanna leave it alone, you want us to go back to the town and discuss it, or whatever, if there's anything.
What about a big dig from here underneath everything to the golf course?
I'd suggest a phrase other than big dig. Sean?
Elevated highway.
The Muzzy check.
Flyover.
That's from, that stuff from the big day.
Mark, did you have any other?
No, I said my piece. I think,
All right, great,
Thank
so
you
we'll
for
hold off on
listening.
that one.
Okay, sure.
Okay. All right,
Sounds good.
yes?
So we have draft calendar. So we had tentative approval of the 1920 calendar at a previous meeting, and that was to identify the start date, because we get a lot of calls at central office, was when is school gonna start next year? So we did that, and we had said at that meeting that we just needed to work out some of our parent conference days and try to have some uniformity around release times. Sometimes early release times are 12, sometimes they're 12:15. We're trying to just make those old 12 o'clock. So we cleaned that up on the calendar as well. And then the final piece on the calendar,
Sorry, Scott, which folder are you in? I didn't see it in March. Is it back from February when we first discussed it?
I can load it for you.
I saw it in one of these folders, and now I can't find it.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you all.
Hi, Andy, thanks for coming.
Andy, thanks.
Bye, Andy.
Thanks.
So you know what, let's put the calendar on the next meeting, because the version that I'm gonna show you is probably just gonna confuse things. And so why don't we just add that to the second March meeting?
I have the one from Antoinette, or is that not?
Yeah, there's been a small update to it, so I don't wanna put
Okay.
one in there. I mean, the changes are minute, they're tiny. And again, we already have pre-approval, it's just to get final approval of the
Yeah.
calendar, but I think if I put a copy in there now, it will, it can wait.
Okay.
Yep.
And then with the snow day we just had on Monday, what is the final day of school right now?
June 14th?
June 14th.
That's a
Okay.
Friday, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then the last piece of new business is a residency update. So in terms of our residencies, we worked with these back in the fall. We had one situation or one circumstance where we had a family ask for an extension, and we're working through that process with that family. That family has continued to maintain updates with us over the course of time. We do have a new request for next school year. This came into the office about a week or so ago, requesting permission for 2 children to attend Fuller Meadow in the fall of '19. They're building a home in our district. The home is under construction, and the completion date is estimated to be on or around February of 2020. In addition, they have sold their current residence, and they have been looking in Middleton for housing while they're building. Unfortunately, they've been unsuccessful in finding an adequate place to live during the construction in Middleton. The family had carefully selected Middleton to build a home. We're currently part of the Tri-Town Union. They are a family that was living in one of our other towns, and heard wonderful things about the Middleton schools, the staff, and the commitment to learning. Because of these qualities, we're excited to be part of the community. So the request is to begin school in the fall. They would not be living in Middleton, they would be living outside of Middleton. Start to school in the fall, and it looks, according to the letter here, that they'd be estimated to be in on around February of 2020. And so that's the request from.
It's March, that's almost a year to build a house, it's by hand.
Yeah, we're finding that to be, I would say the family that, one of our other families that we worked with this fall, you know, they were hoping to be in originally in the end of like October. I think that was one of the approvals that we had done. And, you know, they had asked for an extension, and they're, you know, looking more towards March. So it's, some of these processes are extending.
But they own a house and they're paying taxes already. Is this true with these people?
In this particular situation, my understanding is it's the similar development from the other one that we worked on, so it's land. And they'd be building a house on land, so they,
They're on the land, so they're paying tax on the land, not on the house.
correct.
Not till you get.
So that's why they can't break ground yet. It's too cold for foundation.
I think
Yeah.
we've we've set somewhat of, we've kind of gotten ourselves into a pickle because we've tried to be very flexible and accommodating. But I think we need to be careful in the future. We should set I think we need some guidelines here. And I'm all for, people building and wanting to start school here. Of course they do. It's a great school system, but I think we've been very forgiving.
Fair.
And overly fair about letting children start in, the situation that we're in now. It's not gonna be, they're probably not gonna get in, till later in the school year. And then this one's already telling us they're not gonna be starting. They're already in the Tri-Town. I just don't think we can make
No, they're not.
exceptions for,
They sold their house in the Tri-Town.
Right.
They said they're living outside of the Tri-Town now.
They sold in the Tri-Town. We're looking to find something in Middleton while they were building. So they're, I think they're probably now looking, this is my guess, probably outside the Tri-Town while they're going through the building process, because I don't think there's a lot of rentals in town. So I think that's sort of, this particular situation, they're no longer in the Tri-Town.
I don't think it should matter. I guess that's what I was kind of getting at.
Sure.
It shouldn't really matter where they're
Where you
coming
are,
from, and
sure.
we've made that's been part of the discussion. While they're coming from X town, this is a great school system, we should allow that to happen. I don't think that should matter where they're coming from, because then it gets a little bit,
Yeah.
Hairy.
Where do you stop?
yeah,
giving?
and I think,
But we kind of had a guideline of a couple of months or something, didn't we? Sort of informal, we didn't put anything in paper, but we'd said if it was within a couple of months of the start of the school year, that was one thing, but now they're talking about almost, if everything goes well, more than halfway through the school year.
yeah. If everything goes well.
Yeah. Do you have an
You
opinion?
don't have like a time, I don't know if we could even get this, but from the contractor, a timeline, because.
I think
No.
that's off the table. We already went through that with the last one. And I remember saying that it was ambitious
Right.
for them to think they'd be in by October.
And that was with the
And
builder's
here
letter,
we
I
are.
believe.
And you were right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. If the builder says we're doing this, okay, but if you don't have the money to cover that, then it holds it off. If there's a, weather elements, it holds it off. Like, the builder is of course gonna want them in sooner.
Do you have an opinion, Scott? Or legal
Yeah, I think it's,
standpoint?
yeah, I mean, it gets to be, I agree with the statement, that it gets to be challenging when we're, if we're a month or two out, you're into like September, October. I'm looking at some of the other residency things we had earlier this year, in by September, in by October. We had 3 or 4 back in the summertime that either Amy and I worked out on the phone, or we brought to the committee, and, they were in by September 10th, September 7th, and, So I think we were, I
Yeah.
think at your point, Mark, like
Yeah.
previous conversations were always like September, October timeframe, that does seem to match. And I think the one particular case where we're now, looking at more of a March, maybe, like to your point, is it gonna be even early April? That's a situation that we were informed it was October, and I think that's why the committee had some comfort around that one, because it was like, oh, it seems to be October, and Freddie's point is noted that I think he did make the comment of, that's ambitious at the time. So, it's the balance, right? It's a balance between if you own land and you're paying some level of taxes, if you stick to the policy, right? Our residency policy is a non-resident child may be enrolled. Once you have an occupancy permit issued by the building inspector for a newly constructed residency, a closing document in case of an existing residency, or a lease or rental agreement.
I think we stick to that.
If anything, maybe a 6-week leeway. When you're buying a home or you're building a home, what you have to plan for your circumstances, whatever those might be. I don't think, I would say, if anything, maybe a buffer of you have 4 weeks to be able to present this from the time when you're notifying us, or from the start of the school year, or just, so that we can be somewhat flexible. And it sounds like we have, and I think, but to the October move-in date situation, the whole year almost.
I think in the future, we adhere to the policy. And if the move-in date that we're told is beyond the start of school, we just deny it.
Until they move in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they're coming, and we know they're coming, and we want them to feel welcome in our community and to be a part of it, right? I mean, we're basically saying to these families, you can buy here, but it doesn't matter until you put your, sign on the door. Is that?
Well, then anyone can buy a plot of land and send their kids to school here without ever moving here.
They're saying they have an intent to build, and the builder signs it off.
Keep in mind, it's $15,000 a kid to educate, so if this family only has one child, and they only have a piece of land they're paying taxes on, they're paying $3,000-4,000 a year to, even when they finish their $1 million house, they're only paying $12,000. 13 versus the 15 it costs to educate one. If they have 4 kids, we're net negative.
And to that point, we're adding a section in anticipation of, potential move-ins that may not even be a resident here. So I think that's.
Yeah, that's
a good.
that's a really important point, Kristen, really good point. I think that consideration, for sure.
So with the residency policy, did Boxford and Topsfield adopt the same policy at this point? And we approved it.
Yep.
So, yeah,
The policy, enrollment prior to residency.
So,
You need to have an occupancy permit, if you're not living there yet, you still making the move or whatever, but
Right.
you have an occupancy permit or you have a closing document. In the case of an existing residency, you have a lease or rental agreement.
and this is officially our first residency that has come to our attention since the document's been approved
Yeah, that policy didn't change. That policy was, the same.
for all,
Yeah.
okay.
It
Yeah.
has been the same.
Yeah.
We didn't change
We
it.
didn't change it.
No, there was no language change on that one.
I'll move to, unless you guys are still debating, I'll move to deny the request.
Okay. Someone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Thank you.
All right.
No correspondence, and then no other.
Okay.
So we are into consent.
Consent agenda.
Step up, Mom.
So if someone wants to make a motion to approve the bill warrants and consent agenda as documented, right?
Correct.
Got it.
Moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mark. Second, Fred. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have an executive session?
We do?
Okay. So, someone will make a motion for us to adjourn our meeting, to go into executive session, only to come back out to,
We don't adjourn into executive session.
roll call into executive,
I
yeah, and
can't
then.
adjourn it.
What's
No,
that?
I can't adjourn the meeting.
We would roll call into executive session,
Okay.
and then we would roll call out for the sole purpose of adjourning.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'd roll call,
That, yes.
All right. All right, so we're gonna
So
roll
move-
call.
enter into executive session.
Enter into executive session.
Second.
So roll call, please.
Mark Moretti, aye.
Ed Clapp, aye.
Kristen Richardson, hi.
Amy Karas, aye. Okay, and then we're good?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll come back out to
Adjourn.
adjourn the meeting.
Yep.